you ready for spookiness?
I'm ready. I've been ready for, dare I say, months? I think it's been months.
You've been excited for this spooky episode for quite a while, and I'm happy to bring it to you.
I hope you guys are just as excited as we are because we have a lot of stories. And guess what? We won't be talking that much this episode. So
I feel like there's not a lot of opinions to give on spooky stories.
Not much to say.
So we're just going to be doing more talking through the actual stories. I've got 13 stories to read out for you guys.
I do as well.
This could be our longest episode ever. This could be an extended episode, depending on how fast we can get through these.
We'll see.
Or how sore my butt gets. But welcome to ThreadTalk podcast, where we're giving you guys the best of the spooky stories that we have found on Reddit. We're going to get into it. Shreese has been super excited, so I'll let her go first.
Ooh, okay. I say I'm excited, but I'm kind of scared for your stories. When I was researching these ones, I was scared.
Yeah, it's a little terrifying.
Okay. I will start with, this one comes from r/paranormal from user Wispified. Our bizarre experiences with the forest behind our house eventually forced us to move out. I was 8 years old when we first moved into the house on the edge of the forest. My parents had their doubts about buying a house with a backyard bordered by forest. They had concerns about wild animals getting into our bins or hurting our dogs, and were worried one of us might go too far into the trees and get lost. But it was cheap. My dad liked the seclusion, and my mom loved the house itself, and my siblings and I were excited about playing in the backyard and exploring the forest. Our first sign that something wasn't right was that our dogs were absolutely terrified of the forest. They never went into the forest for any reason. If a toy they'd been playing with found its way past the tree line, they would refuse to retrieve it, and when one of us went in, they would pace anxiously until we returned. On occasion, we'd notice the dogs staring at a spot in the forest in obvious distress, sometimes growling or barking, but we could never see anything there. My brother once carried one of our dogs into the trees to show her there was nothing scary about it, but she wiggled out of his grip and sprinted into the house in a panic. If we were in the backyard when it was getting dark, we sometimes heard noises like someone was walking through the forest, sticks crunching underfoot, branches being pushed aside. If we called out, there was no response. But if we shined a flashlight around, we would occasionally catch a glimpse for just a split second of something that we could swear looked like a person walking around in the dark. My parents quickly banned us from entering the forest at all after dark, and even during the day, we weren't allowed to go out of sight of the house. My sister's bedroom window looked out at the backyard and the forest beyond, and she remembers looking out her window one night and seeing a shadowy figure standing right at the edge of the backyard. She says there was something wrong with it, like it wasn't quite standing on the ground, and it was a little too tall to be a person, and it was sort of distorted. And she was convinced it was staring at her. She called for our dad, saying there was a man in the yard staring through her window, and when he ran outside to chase off whoever it was, she continued to watch the figure. It didn't move, but when the light from our dad's flashlight passed over it, it suddenly just wasn't there anymore. We regularly heard knocking at the back door at night, with no one there. Our parents thought it was teenagers playing pranks and stopped bothering even opening the door until one rainy night when the knocking was persistent and agitated. My mom pointed out there might be someone needing shelter from the heavy rain outside, but when she opened the door, not only was there no one there, but there were no wet footprints on the porch. The knocking continued the whole time we lived there. It would happen several times in the span of a few weeks, then stop for months, then start up again. My parents eventually installed a security camera, and there were never anyone at the door. The camera wasn't all useless, though. About 3 years into living there, my brother started having night terrors and sleepwalking. When he went sleepwalking, he would always go out to the back door and start walking towards the forest. My mom, being a light sleeper, would hear the door open and would run out to get him before he made it into the forest. After the third or fourth time it happened, my brother asked to see the camera footage because he wanted to see how he looked when he was sleepwalking, I guess thinking it would look funny. The footage showed him walking out onto the porch, then pausing as if listening to something, and shaking his head, then reluctantly walking forward as if being pulled or forcefully guided by something. One evening, my dad was in the backyard, and he heard my sister calling him from the forest, seemingly in distress. Thinking she'd gone exploring the forest and fallen over or hurt herself, he ran in and started calling to her, but quickly realized it was too dark to see her. He couldn't pinpoint where her voice was coming from. He told her to wait where she was, and he will grab a flashlight. When he ran back into the house for the flashlight, he saw my sister inside, safe and completely unconcerned. At the time, my dad hadn't told us about hearing my sister's voice in the forest, so when I heard my mom's voice coming from the forest months later while I was outside with the dogs one evening, I didn't question it despite the fact I'd seen my mom inside recently and hadn't noticed her walk past me. My mom was calling to me, saying she'd gotten her sweater caught in some branches and needed me to come in and help her. As I walked in, the dog started barking, alerting my dad, who saw me through the window wandering into the forest. He came outside and called to me, and I said I was just helping Mom. He yelled back that Mom was inside and I needed to run back to the house as fast as I could, which I did. After this, my parents had a fence built around the backyard and started looking for a new place. In the time between the fence being built and us moving in, it got way worse. We heard knocking at the door more regularly, as well as tapping on the windows, as if someone was walking the perimeter of the house and trying every window. We would often hear scratching and scraping sounds on the fence and voices beyond it. My brother's night terrors got more frequent, and one night my mom didn't hear the door open when he went sleepwalking, and he woke up standing at the fence, staring into the forest, with the dogs barking at him. The last morning we spent there, less than 4 years after we moved in, we woke up to find the back door fully open, and the security camera footage showed it slowly swing open on its own. Since moving out, my brother's sleepwalking has stopped, though he still gets night terrors and he suffers from pretty severe anxiety. A few nights ago, he called me out of the blue, and after a bit of small talk, he asked me if I think the door being opened that final night meant that whatever was out there finally got in. He was trying to make light of it, saying he was getting into the spirit of Halloween, joking about how maybe we should just all get exorcised, just in case something latched onto us all those years ago. But I think he's deeply bothered by everything that happened. I know I still am a little. I still get nervous around dark wooded areas. I don't know what I think was out there in the forest behind our house at night, but I get the feeling that, given the chance, it would have swallowed us whole.
Holy fuck. Bro, I'm tingling. Oh my god, I'm so scared right now.
I am terrified to go on hikes now.
Oh my god.
This story, since I read it, and I think we've been on one hike since, like...
We go through the woods all the time.
I'm scared.
We don't go through any night hikes, though. I have a few ghostly stories of my own that I'm thinking I'll actually leave till the end.
Yes.
But I've got chills right now because nothing scares me more than dark woods at nighttime. I grew up on a 25-acre horse farm with woods.
That's so scary.
Oh, I'm creeped out right now.
I know.
Oh my god. Kid wakes up at the fence. Luckily, they put the fence in.
I know.
How far would he have gone without the fence? Oh my god.
This one was the most believable for me.
Oh man. Okay.
Because I feel like there's a lot of scary stories about woods, like forests.
Yeah, for sure.
So spooky.
So some of yours, I think, are fiction, right?
Some of them, yes.
So you guys won't know until Teresa's done reading.
Yes.
But none of mine are fiction. Or if they are, it's not declared. They're declared as nonfiction, and the person would be lying or whatever. But all of my stuff is apparently nonfiction. I didn't get any fiction stuff.
Okay, I only have a couple
because I just found so many nonfiction. But I got chills right now.
Yes, this one was nonfiction, so it was real.
If you guys are watching on YouTube, you can see that we have decorated and we turned off the lights. So we got a little bit of a spooky atmosphere. I think we should turn the lights on. I'm fucking terrified over here.
No. I say that now, but I'm going to be the one here trapped with these headphones on listening to your stories. No escape.
I have so many good ones, but I think my all-time one, that for the best one for this episode, is kind of similar, like
fine.
that. But I'm gonna leave that one closer to the end. I don't want to give away all the good stuff, the best ones right at the beginning.
Okay.
And then I got a couple in here that will, you know, a couple Am I the Assholes that will change the pace. But I'm gonna start with this one. So this one is coming from the subreddit Ghost Stories. It was posted 25 days ago. The username is Prior Perception 166 with a couple underscores in there. We leave all the links down below. So if you guys want to explore these stories on Reddit and read them for yourselves and read all the comments and everything else, all the links are just down below. Just find the one for this story. And so the title is It's Spooky Season. Give me a real life experience that scared the shit out of you. And then OP goes on to make his own post underneath this title. So this is OP's story. I have several, but growing up, my dad's house was haunted and still to this day freaks me out. So I was maybe 16 or 17 and had stayed at my aunt's house, my dad's sister, and she lived 2 doors down from my dad's. Well, her grandchildren, my cousins, decided to have a sleepover at her house. The next morning, I get up and it's dreary outside, but it's also winter, and I look at my oldest cousin and tell him I'm going to walk to the house and change my clothes so that we can go outside and do whatever. We usually play ball in the graveyard across the road. He says okay, and I head to the house. As I get to the driveway, I see someone standing in the front of the balcony doors inside the house. And then I stop walking because no one is supposed to be home. My dad and stepmom are both at work. So then the person disappears, like they just stepped back to where I couldn't see them anymore. I remember the person was the shape of a woman who had on this long white gown and dark hair. So now my anxiety is through the roof. I see my cousin start to head my way, and I keep walking towards the house because I thought by the time I get the door unlocked, he'll be here and it'll be all good. Psych! We had a golden retriever outside, and when I opened the door, I called for her to come inside with me. But when she got to the door, she tucked her tail between her legs and wouldn't go in any further. So that freaked me out. I grabbed her by her collar to try and gently tug her and tell her to come in the house that it's cold. She fought me and eventually ran down the stairs. My cousin is now at the end of the driveway and yells for me to hurry up. And I am tempted to say fuck it and stay in my pajamas, but I leave the door open and run in my room thinking if the door is open, I'm good. So I run through the kitchen, into the dining room, then the living room, and then the hallway to my room on the far right. I could have just went through the kitchen and the den to get to my room, but the den always creeps me out. So I get to my room and I strip off my pajamas as fast as I can, and I put on some jeans and I grab a long sleeve shirt. As I'm putting the shirt on, I hear running down the hallway with loud footsteps coming towards me. And I go to scream, but nothing comes out. So I go running out of my room and back the way I came. I have my shirt halfway on by the time I run outside. My cousin is now under the carport and asks me what's wrong. I tell him something is in my house, and he's like, what do you mean? So I finish getting my shirt on and I go to turn around to close the door and freeze. He asks what's wrong. I point to the kitchen window, which is beside the door, and through the kitchen window you can see not only the kitchen but the den too, and the den light was on. I look back at him and I tell him that I never turn that on because I never go in there. So he starts getting freaked out and stands beside me on the step. The running came again towards us and he clears the steps. So I'm standing there feeling like I'm frozen and not being able to move. I remember him telling me to come on, and I tell him that I have to turn off the light because my stepmom would literally cuss me out since she was kind of abusive. So I run inside and I have him watch me as I go and I hit the light switch, and I see a dark figure on the wall in front of me, and then it disappears. I run out of the house and I slam the door. I try to tell my stepmom, but she thought I was crazy and none of that stuff was real. So to this day, hearing running in horror movies from ghosts where it's loud and stuff causes the hair on my body to stand up.
I don't like it. The noise, that's what it reminded me of, like a scary movie of like just a dark hallway and like running, not footsteps, running is terrifying.
Oh my god, that's the worst. Like something's coming after you.
Terrifying.
Fuck no.
If I was a mom or whatever, if someone came to me and was like, this happened to me, I would believe them 100%. I believe this stuff.
I wonder how many ghost stories like Madison and Kat would have, because we lived on like a horse farm with dark, scary woods,
We need to ask
big, spooky house. For Halloween, since my birthday is on Christmas, my parents would always throw me a Halloween party. And everybody used to love it. I remember my parents did it up until like grade 8 or something like that. But we would have the walking trails through the woods, and they would set it up with like a Halloween theme. My dad would dress up with like a Jason mask. He'd take the blade off the chainsaw, and then he would chase us with the chainsaw like around the corner.
That's awesome.
They would put like a old mattress, and then they would put like cobwebs on top of the mattress. So like you're walking, and then you think you're sinking, and then it's like cobwebby. And then there'd be like candy all along the trail. So like everybody would have a bucket, and you try to like grab what candy you could while you're getting the shit scared out of you as you're like walking along. And then my mom and dad they would tell ghost stories and everything. They loved Halloween. Yeah, it was spooky.
I love that. That must have like made your childhood.
Yeah. So one of the top comments on this thread is another story.
Okay.
I've posted this on the paranormal sub before. At least I think I did. Anyways, here's the story. This is a true story from several years ago. So, for about 6 months, I rented out a basement from a family. I lived in this state for work, and it was just convenient and cheap at the time, and it worked out for everyone. The basement was unfinished, but had studs up where the walls would be. Had heat, but a cement floor. Living in the northern part of the United States during the winter, it regularly got quite chilly at times down there. So much that I had 2 space heaters to keep warm. The family who owned the house had quite a bit of stuff piled up in the basement as well. They were mild pack rats. Not hoarder level, but you could tell that they hadn't unpacked everything from their last move. Bags, boxes, and totes, and everything was just piled up. I had the one central area to myself where I had my bed and my TV was set up with a few chairs and whatnot. It was like a small studio apartment. Anyways, I had had some paranormal experiences over my life, but this was on a new level. It began probably a couple months after I moved in. I started feeling, uncomfortable, I guess, is the best way to describe it. Then I would go to bed for the night. I'm not usually one to be terrified of the dark, but even I began to sleep with a light on in the next room over. Really, the only separation between my room and the next room were the wall studs. But I was uncomfortable, like I didn't feel okay in the dark and closing my eyes. I'm not sure, just weird I guess. But weeks went on. As I would sit down and play Xbox or watch TV when I was not working, I would see a shadow move out of the corner of my eye, walking between the wall beams in the next room over. This was obviously concerning, but having had experiences before, I wouldn't say terrifying, just like, oh, that's creepy. It was a fairly regular occurrence, maybe once or twice a week. Then the dreams started. I had reoccurring nightmares about a female apparition, very scary looking with long flowing dark hair. The dream always took place in a house I didn't recognize, and I knew the spirit was in there with me, but I didn't know where. It would always jump from behind a corner and scare the crap out of me, and I would try to run away from it, but I couldn't move fast enough, and just before it caught me, I would snap myself awake. Those were the worst part of my experiences there. I would wake up shaken and usually sweating and out of breath. Finally, I asked the homeowner if anyone had ever told them that there was something in her basement. I remember her face went pale. She told me that other people had reported things happening down there from time to time. There were examples, but I don't recall what they were now. But I do remember that she told me she had some belongings down there that once belonged to her first fiance. He had killed himself many years prior, but she still hung on to some of his stuff. I found my own place shortly after and moved out. The dreams immediately stopped. No more shadows. It totally stopped after leaving. Thank God.
I've had ghost dreams before. I actually feel like I get them pretty often.
Yeah?
But they're not reoccurring. And I don't really remember, I don't have an example, but in the dream I know it's a ghost. Or like a bad ghost. I don't want to say the word demon because I'm scared.
I can't say that I've ever had any ghost dreams or anything. I do remember when I was younger, I used to have these terrifying nightmares, but they weren't even nightmares. It was you know those old like screensavers that used to kind of like bounce around the screen and they kind of would like get bigger and then smaller and then bigger. It was kind of like that, but it was like there's like a pumpkin carving blade. Is like a really small thin blade with like the little edges on it, like when you're carving out a pumpkin.
Okay.
Little serrated edge. But my mind would like envision like a little serrated wire. Like the whole wire was like a serrated knife wire cable thing, and it would like pulse and get bigger and like a swollen finger. And then back down to like the serrated like cable wire, and then back to like kind of like pulsing thick, and then it would like move around, and that used to be like my recurring nightmare. I don't know, that's like the best way I could describe it, but it was always terrifying because
that is terrifying.
It wasn't like any dream. I wasn't living through anything. It was like this like kind of like I was watching like this thing move around and like pulse and like vibrating through me. It was messed up.
That is really scary.
Yeah.
I've never told anybody about my ghost dreams because I actually don't, like, I never wanted to say it out loud because I didn't want it to be true. But sometimes I'm a little scared that I'm like, sometimes I'm scared I'm going to get possessed. I don't want to say that out loud. I don't. Stop. No, stop. I hope this doesn't like welcome any unwanted.
We should have got a Ouija board.
No, we are never doing that.
That was the first movie we watched together, eh?
Yes,
that was a scary movie, the Ouija board movie after we carved pumpkins.
Yes. Oh my
on
gosh.
Our second date?
Second date?
Yeah.
Okay.
We met right before Halloween.
Yes.
Our second day we went to the pumpkin patch and then got the pumpkins after and stuff.
Yep.
Yeah. I got chills.
I know. I feel sick a little bit.
I think we should stop.
No.
This episode, this 10-minute episode.
We gotta fight through it. Oh, we gotta give the people what they want.
Babe, I'm shaking.
Me too. I'm scared.
It's so dark in here.
I'm so glad we're not doing this at night. It's still pretty light. Like it's 2:00 in the afternoon. Yeah. All right. This one comes from Let's Not Meet. From Raging See You Next Tuesday. That's the username. A man was caught on my sleep recording app at 3:57 a.m. I hope this belongs here. This happened about 7-ish years ago. I can only provide the sleep recording if allowed. I was spending the night at my friend's house with another friend. It was summer, so we slept with the window wide open, and she didn't have a screen on her window. We were in a safe area though, so we didn't think anything of it. I slept right next to the window with my phone on the windowsill. I used a sleep recording app on my phone because I was known to talk in my sleep, and it was amusing to hear what I'd say. Also important to note, we were completely home alone that night. This time, however, my phone recording caught a man's voice. The first thing sounds like a grunt. Her window was high up, but not second story high. Her house was on kind of a slope. Then we heard a man say, "Up, hello?" in a loud, almost cheery voice. And then at the end of the recording, you can hear the man whisper, "Oh God, something is wrong." Thank the heavens nothing happened that night. We weren't sure who the hell it could have been. It sounded like a full-grown man, and as mentioned, no one was home. I never slept over at her house after that, which I felt bad for because she was absolutely petrified to sleep in her room again. She also never slept with her window open again. We don't know if he was trying to break in, if maybe he thought it was a buddy's house, but then saw 3 teenage girls all cuddling/sleeping together. I'm not sure, but I still get goosebumps listening to that recording. I still don't sleep with my windows open, and I live nowhere near her now. I just recently found the video, and God does it give me chills. I'd also like validation that I'm not crazy, and he is actually saying, "Oh God, something is wrong" at the end. My friends from that night agree that's what he says at the end, but my boyfriend says he doesn't hear it. Please let me know.
Holy fuck.
We have it.
Okay, I'm gonna play it.
Okay, the first one says it's a bit quieter than the phone recording, and the second one says it's a recording of the phone with a sleep recorder, but there's louder background noise.
Okay, let's do the first one.
Hello.
Okay, here's the second one. can't really hear the, oh God, something's wrong.
I heard it when I didn't have these headphones on. It's like at the end. Try to like put it up to the mic maybe.
That's crazy. What happened? That's wild. You can see the audio waves. That's...
Yeah.
Oh.
We'll link it. So if you guys want to listen to it better.
Yeah, everything's linked. And when they would have heard it actually.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. I'll edit it.
Okay.
And they would have heard it.
Okay. Perfect.
Oh, man.
Spooky.
Oh, my God.
Like, do you think it was a ghost or do you think someone broke into their house and did nothing?
I don't know. Either way, it's spooky.
Either way, it's creepy.
Oh, my God.
I'm getting clammy.
Me too. No piace. Okay.
Right.
Back to me. This one's coming from Paranormal Encounters. Posted 1 year ago. OP has since deleted their account. Title: My 4-year-old daughter predicted my miscarriage. I, 43 female, was about 20-ish weeks pregnant with my 3rd child. My 2 daughters were 4 and 1 at the time. They're now 21 and 18. I was sitting on the floor making a fire in the fireplace before my sister came over to watch the girls while my husband and I went to our ultrasound appointment to find out what we were having. While I was building this fire, I was talking to my eldest daughter. We had talked about the baby a lot, her and I. She was excited as her baby sister was becoming annoying and a little mean. And did this girl love mother/caring for things. So she is sitting at her desk in a big ass office chair that practically swallowed her up and spinning herself around while talking about baby stuff. She just spinning her ass off, and I looked over at her as she spun herself by using her foot to push off from the desk for momentum, and I nonchalantly said, "Okay, Lily Bean, who do you think is in mommy's tummy? A baby brother or a baby sister?" Without missing a beat, and while still spinning, she said in her tiny little sweet voice, "Oh mama, that baby isn't going to come out of your tummy. That baby is going to stay in heaven. It's okay." I got mad at her for saying that and walked over and stopped her from spinning and sat down in front of the chair. I didn't want to scare her by looming over her because I was pregnant and paranoid, but I asked her why she would say that, and she goes, "'Cause I know." She wasn't sad, she was just normal Lily. She was the sweetest girl at that age. Anywho, my husband and I went to her appointment, and wouldn't you know it, there was no heartbeat. The baby was gone. I told my husband what happened with Lily on that traumatic ride home. He wrote it off and reminded me how weird our kids are. I had a D&E 2 days after that. I decided my baby building days were done once I made my way through the grief of that day, even though it took about 2 years. I still don't know how she knew. She says she doesn't remember this at all, but remember that house and time period really well. Very strange.
What the heck? The fact that she doesn't remember that spooks me out even more.
Yeah, imagine that's like spooky, but like traumatizing as well.
Yeah.
Like you'd be like mad at your kid for saying that.
Yeah.
And then you go
obviously
there.
You wouldn't think that they're right. They're telling the future.
Yeah.
I wonder if she's had any other kind of like psychic, what's the word? Psychic experiences before.
Yeah.
Or intuitions. That's crazy. I almost wonder, like, maybe she was like temporarily possessed by something. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know.
I don't know if she doesn't remember it. That's terrifying.
I'm blown away. Oh.
That also makes me wonder, though, like, if that was true, if she did predict it, and she said the baby's gonna stay up in heaven, does that mean heaven is real?
Maybe.
It's like,
sometimes I hope
believe
so.
This.
Sometimes I hope so.
Crazy. All right. I'm like closing my laptop so I can really soak in your stories. Okay. This one comes from Ask Reddit. Nurses and doctors of Reddit, what's your weirdest/scariest paranormal stories that took place during work? One of the comments says, I'm a psychiatric nurse early in my career. I worked at a residential mental health facility. There was a resident I'll call Marion Duchenne. He was an elective mute, which simply means that he didn't/wouldn't/couldn't talk, but there was no pathological findings as to why. He had spoken earlier in his life and, in fact, seemed quite normal back then, with the notable exception of being close to 7 feet tall. He'd been raised in the Deep South and joined the military when he was 19. After boot camp, he was stationed somewhere in the South. One night, he just vanished. It was cleared an AWOL for years, and finally he was declared missing and dead. 10 years later, a 7-foot tall man walked into the VA hospital emergency room in my part of the Midwest and said to the receptionist, "My name is Marion Duchenne, and I've been dead for 10 years. Those were the last words he's ever spoke. He was covered with dust, and he was wearing the same clothes he'd been reported to be wearing the night he vanished. His social security number had not been used, and he had no identification on his person. However, they were able to identify him, I guess via fingerprints. He was well fed and in good health, except for his refusal to speak. The family was notified, but they said they had already aggrieved their lost man, and that whoever was claiming to be him simply could not be. They said he was a quote-unquote haint, and a stand-in for their dead relative, and demanded not to be contacted again. Marion paced all day, every day, not in a frantic way, but just lumbering up and down the halls and outside. He smiled all the time and would be moving his mouth in a way that indicated talking or muttering, but he was dead silent. He had an unnerving habit of throwing his head back with his mouth wide open, as if he were laughing heartily, but not even a breath could be heard. If told to go to the dining room for a meal, he'd go and eat, but if nobody told him, he would just keep pacing, never indicating hunger. If offered a cigarette, he'd smoke it in an oddly formal way, almost delicately, if that made sense. But he never seemed to crave smoking. The man wanted nothing. If I talked to him, he appeared to listen, periodically throwing his head back in that laughter-mimicking way of his. There was nothing to do for this man. Various medications were tried, but they did not affect him either positively or negatively. Occupational therapy did nothing because Marion would just grin, and unless told to stay put, he'd get up and start pacing again. On my last day at the job, on my way to something better, the last thing I saw was Marion pacing in the parking lot, throwing his head back to laugh. Later, I wondered if all along I'd been dealing with a ghost. All these years later, I still don't know.
Jesus fucking Christ.
Kind of reminds me of the movie Smile, but like way more sinister.
That was a good movie. Can you
imagine just like a mute person just like throwing your head back laughing?
Oh.
Just gives me the creeps.
Bro, Smile is one of the creepiest movies ever.
Yeah.
I think they're coming up with a second one. Remember? Yeah, they are. Remember yesterday?
Yeah.
When I was like, babe, look at my computer screen.
Yeah.
I was playing Call of Duty. And the message popped up like before you can log in. It's like, here's your message of the day or whatever, and it's the Smile 2 poster. Like they're advertising it on there, and I was just like, "Oh, that's fucking creepy." And then and you were like, "Damn."
Yeah, that was spooky. When is it being released?
October 18th.
Ooh.
In Canada.
What's the scariest movie you've ever seen?
Oh fuck! Scariest movie I've ever seen. Oh. That one that we watched, Hereditary.
Yes.
That was fucked up.
That one was so
that was
messed
scary.
up.
I think The Ring.
I don't know if I've ever seen that one.
Where the girl climbs through the TV and then the horse gets chopped up by the boat.
Yeah.
Saw one's always got me. Oh man.
I used to watch all of the Paranormal Activities when I was a kid with my dad.
Those ones I never really found scary. I found them fun.
But I watched them as a kid. Like I was literally like 12 years old or something. Like
we were watching Gilmore Girls and they were like referencing like how Paranormal 3 was in movie theaters. And I'm like, oh my God, that was like 2005, 2006 or something like that.
I don't remember that.
And I was like, that's the one that I grew up on. Like I never watched Paranormal 3 with the roller coaster was the first one that I watched.
I loved those movies. Those were scary to me.
Yeah. I love the Jason versus Freddy one. The Jason movies.
Oh, okay. Not Paranormal Activity.
No, that was
Okay.
more like murder. You ever watch the Halloween ones? We should watch the new Halloween movie.
No, I haven't. I don't think. Maybe I have.
The one with the mask or whatever. The guy wears masking, knifes people, stabs them.
I find paranormal stuff a lot more scary.
The Hills Have Eyes.
I don't think I've seen it.
No, Texas Chainsaw Massacre.
Those ones like are just gory.
I can't stand anything based on a true story. And Texas Chainsaw Massacre is based on a true story.
It?
I absolutely hate horror stories based on a true story. I can't stand it.
I like them better.
You know what ones also too? What was it? The videotape ones. Was it Paranormal Activities?
Yeah.
But not the first two, not the TV, the third one I think, where it's a video camera, not security cameras.
Oh, okay, yeah.
That one.
I find them all scary.
Well, yeah, they are all scary.
Yeah, because those ones I think were said to be based on true events as well. I could be wrong.
I'm out. I'm scared right now.
I feel like one of the... I don't like jump scares. See, that's the thing.
All horror movies are jump scares.
No, I
It's
like
not
a
scary
good
unless it's jump
creepy
scare.
movie without jump scares. If you guys have any recommendations for like something that will really chill my bones but doesn't have like a lot of jump scares, please recommend. I think another scary one was that cult one. What's it called? Midsummer.
Yeah, that one was creepy.
Yeah, that one gave me the chills.
Yeah, cult ones I'm not on board with. That one was... Oh.
Someone replied to that comment and said, "Oh, I know about haints. They're very real in Southeast coastal cultures. Did he have an aversion to any specific colors? How do you feel about water?" The OP commenter replied, "He had no aversion to anything, no opinions that I could see. If reminded to shower, he did so. He wore any color of clothing that was laid out for him." Someone else replied, "Can you explain what a haint is?" What exactly is a haint? Haint is an old southern word for a specific type of ghost or evil spirit from the Carolina coast, but found in tales from various regions of the South. Belief in haints probably originated with the Gullah Geechee people, sorry if I'm mispronouncing that, descendants of African slaves in the Carolina, Low Country, and Barrier Islands. In South Carolina, haints are malicious ghosts, often seeking to steal or harm naughty children. May be used as a story to make unruly children behave. So I think when I googled it, it was like someone trying to like steal a body and like trying to
Possess?
not possess, but like fake it, like you be someone else, like it's like a separate entity altogether.
It's fucked. Truth or Dare. That was another scary movie. And those other movies that you had me watching, with the dolls or the
Dolls.
no, the couple that knows paranormal things.
The Conjuring.
Yeah.
Yeah, those ones were pretty scary.
Fuck.
All right.
Back to me.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So this one is coming from the subreddit Ask Reddit. The thread was started 7 years ago, and the title is, "What's your best true spooky story?" And a lot of people drop some really good stories on here. So I actually have 5
Oh,
that are from this thread.
let's go.
So I'm just going to read one right now.
I'm ready.
Okay. Oh, man. I'm scared. I'm going to pick this one because it kind of bounces off a little bit of yours with the military theme. I had just finished my initial military training and got sent to my first duty station. My unit was at NTC for pre-deployment training, so I met up with my rear echelon. I got issued my room and spent 3 very disturbing days/nights in the barracks with weird stuff happening, like gear not where I left it, locked drawers being open, and the microwave turning on by itself. Shit like that. My roommate, who I knew throughout the training, showed up on the 4th day, and I told him something along the lines of, "Watch your shit. Someone's been fucking with my stuff, and I don't know who." So the fourth night comes, and myself and my roommate secure our room and gear and go to bed. We have to be up at 5:30 a.m. for a PT, so it's an early night. We lock all of our stuff and go to bed. I wake up around 1 a.m. because my blanket had fallen to the ground and I was cold, which was weird because we are in the south in the summer and it's always hot. I hop down to get my blanket and I notice my armoire is open, so I open the lock, close it, lock it, and get back in my bed. I fell back asleep pretty easy, but I wake up again at 2:30 a.m. and all of my stuff and my roommate's stuff is thrown around the room. I wake up my roommate and he's pissed because someone is fucking with us and can't figure out who it is. We clean it up, lock our stuff, and go back to bed. Now I wake up for the third time at 3:37 and we are not alone. I can hear my roommate snoring, so I know it's not him. I sat up and I saw someone in the little kitchenette area with the fridge open looking into it. I was freezing again. I was about to say something as the soldier turned around. My eyes had a moment to adjust to the bright light, and then I started recognizing gear, like the L-shaped flashlight on his shoulder, his Alice pack with magazine holders and canteens, boots. This dude was completely combat ready. As my eyes reached his face, he turned a bit, and I could see it. Half his head and helmet were gone, blown off by the looks of it. I'm scared shitless at this point. He closed the fridge and walked across the room, keeping his bright green eyes on me, opened my front door and walked out. As he exited, he turned back around and said to me, "Be safe." I didn't sleep the rest of the night. I didn't wake up my roommate. I just sat up in bed for about 2 hours until I had to get ready for PT. As 6:30 rolls around, everyone is outside the barracks in formation getting ready to start PT, and the acting first sergeant says, "Hey, you good? Looks like you've seen a ghost." I reply with, "Negative, I'm fine. Good to go." About halfway through PT, he comes up to me and asks me what's wrong because I am visibly shaken up. I told him I was fine and just didn't get much sleep last night. A few others asked if I was okay, and I just lied and said I was fine. I mean, I really wasn't, and they could see it, but they let me be. After PT, the acting sergeant pulled me to the side and told me to speak freely, openly, with all confidentiality and off the record. What is wrong? I told him that if I told him what happened, he would think I'm batshit crazy. He assured me it was off the record and once again said, "Talk to me. You seriously look like you've seen a ghost." That got an awkward chuckle out of me, and I began to tell my story. When I got to the part about his head, the acting sergeant lost his shit. "Who the fuck put you up to this? This is not funny," etc., etc. He smoked me for about 30 minutes, made me do push-ups, mountain climbers, all that stuff, while yelling at me that I'm a piece of shit. Finally, after about 30 minutes of that, he says, "Look me in the eyes and swear on everything you love that you're not lying to me." I told him I was not lying. It fucking happened. So he says, "Follow me," and I do. We get to the command office, which I'd never been in, and they were obviously locked. He takes me behind 3 locked doors and 3 rooms I have never stepped foot in. Then he opens the last door, and I saw it. It gave me chills. It still gives me chills. But plain as day, there's the soldier's portrait behind the commander's desk. I froze and said, "That's him." The acting sergeant, the guy who assigned me that room, told me who he was. He was a corporal in the unit of my unit's first deployment to Iraq, and he died in an IED attack that took part of his head off. I was the first soldier to be assigned that room since it belonged to the deceased corporal. He forgave me and I forgave him, and he told me some stories about who this guy was. I deployed with that unit just a couple months later and spent 12 months fighting in that shithole. I nearly died I don't know how many times. My vehicle got hit with IEDs and rockets, and it always made me think of that corporal. I survived more things than most people can imagine, and I always felt like that corporal was keeping an eye out for me. Not everyone in my unit was as lucky as me. 3 of my company never got to come home.
That's crazy. That's crazy. Yeah, I feel like hospitals and I guess like military, what are they called? Military places. Encampments? Not encampments.
No. Stations?
Military stations. I feel
I
like
don't know.
they have
Barracks.
like a lot of death surrounding them. So I feel like there's probably a ton of stories out there.
Imagine, like, how creepy do you think old European hospitals are that have been around for like 1,000 years in the same building? Like, how creepy do you think those places are?
Yeah. I wouldn't be able to work there. I'm sure like a lot of just nurses, doctors, there's probably so many stories. I've never actually had a ghost encounter or a story.
I do.
Yeah. Do you want to say it now or later?
I can talk about it now. Okay. I've said this before on one of our first episodes, but I would have been grade 8, 9. No, I think it was in high school. I think it was like grade 11 because it was grade 7. No, it was like grade 7. Yeah. Okay, it was like grade 7 or something. It was Christian and Clayton had come over, and they were my friends from Sutton. And we lived on the 25-acre property, so we'd always go snowmobiling. And then we would rope tie a GT or 2 GTs behind the snowmobile. One person would be the driver, and 2 people would be on the GTs. And we would just have a lot of fun ripping around the property, hitting some jumps and stuff. And I think one of the GTs broke. So it was essentially there's 1 GT and 2 people were on the snowmobile. And it was my turn to be on the GT, and they were on the snowmobile, and we were doing the loops, and we were kind of going through a flat section, and they were making a slight left-hand corner, and all of a sudden, both of them got whipped off the snowmobile and like to the right, like they hit a bar, and the snowmobile went underneath the bar, and they couldn't. They just both got ripped off the snowmobile at the exact same time. And it was so weird because we were in the middle of nothing. There was nothing there to like make them get off. They would have had to jump, but it didn't look like they jumped. Like when somebody jumps off of a snowmobile, you can see their legs move. You can see them jump off to the side. And if there's 2 people, you can kind of see them jump at 2 different times. Like they're not perfectly in sync. Mm-hmm. But they both got ripped off of the snowmobile and thrown on the ground at the exact same time. So it would have had to have been like them messing with me perfectly and both jumping at the exact same time, which would have been a feat in itself because it looked more like they got ripped off. And then they continue to swear that they did not do that. They did not jump. Something hit them. Something ripped them off the snowmobile.
Oh my God.
I could probably call them up today and they would say the same thing. Like they said that for years. Whenever we brought this story up, they would also talk about this as their ghost story reference.
Wow.
That I saw it, I was a witness, I ripped them off, and they did not mess with me. And they don't know what ripped them off the snowmobile.
That's crazy. And it was in the woods, right?
Well, no, it was like in our front field. We were like surrounded by woods, but it was more like in the front. It wasn't inside the wood trails. Okay. It was in our front yard, essentially, in the area in between on the driveway, essentially. But yeah, it was just, they got ripped off and I could not explain it because I'm like, even if they were messing with me, they couldn't have been that in sync. It was like I watched them get ripped off. Like something grabbed them by their jackets and pulled them back, or like they hit like a post and it just went boom.
I believe it.
It was very scary to this day.
Yeah.
Yeah. That was probably one of the terrifying ones. It was broad daylight too. So it wasn't like spooky nighttime, but it was like unexplained.
Yeah. That's still spooky though.
Spooky.
All right. This one comes from r/no sleep. Username bothad7659. My neighbor's tenant keeps waving at me. I think something is very wrong. Now, don't get me wrong, my neighbor Ray seems like a nice guy. He's this handsome man in his mid to late 40s. He's charismatic, bright, and very charming. If I were a few years younger, I might even say I have a little crush on him, though I'd never admit it. However, as of recently, I've been observing him exhibiting some questionable behavior. Trust me, I'm no stranger to unique habits, given I have a few of my own, but his are a little more disturbing. Let me give you some context. Ray has a spare bedroom in his basement. Instead of renting it out to make extra money, he offers up the room to homeless young women in our town free of charge. Now, to most people, this would appear to be a massive act of service done by a stand-up guy. But something about the whole situation is a little off. Before I start bashing Ray, I want to give him some credit. He had some normal hobbies that he kept up with. He loved to garden. He was constantly digging up his backyard, mulching it and tending to the various species of plants and trees that grew in a seemingly random pattern. This was normal enough, given a large majority of our community had taken up gardening as a hobby. He would even have some of the women he let stay in his house to help out. I had often seen them digging holes and watering plants under Ray's supervision. However, this would never last long, given that these ladies wouldn't stay longer than a month or two, and I didn't see much of them. I remember being confused the first time I watched him ushering one lady into the home. Being the nosy neighbor I am, I had asked him who she was later that day, assuming she was a family member of his who was passing through our tiny rural town, or maybe even a lover he was trying to keep discreet. But when Ray responded, he got all excited and childlike. "Oh, those are some homeless girls I've been taking care of. I love to look out for homeless population in town. Wanted to make sure they have a safe place to sleep and a nice meal to eat each day." I thought it was a bit weird that he was only choosing young girls as tenants, but I figured there were a good reason for it. Perhaps he had a female friend or sibling who had been in a similar situation and was more sympathetic to that demographic. At the end of the day, it seemed like a wholesome, innocent contribution to society. At least that's how I tried to view it, despite the gnawing feeling in my gut and blaring sirens sounding in my head. All I knew was that each day, Ray would leave his house at approximately 7 in the morning after having his cup of joe on the porch and chirping a good morning to each passerby. Like clockwork, he'd return at 5 in the evening, do some yard work, and withdraw back into the house. I usually wouldn't see much of him for the rest of the day. He must be quite a man of routine, I thought. Even so, there was still something off about him. Something in his eyes that wasn't quite right. Something very few people would take note of if they weren't looking close enough. And on top of that, recently, things started getting even weirder. The most recent occupant of my neighbor's downstairs bedroom was this blonde girl who looked no older than 18. Ray had ushered her into the house, like all the rest, with one arm slung around her shoulder and a black jacket shielding most of her face from my view. From what I could see, she looked fairly well kept for someone who had supposedly been living on the street. And what the hell was with the jacket? I mean, for God's sake, she was no celebrity, right? The following days, after Ray would leave, I heard some odd sounds coming from his house during all hours of the day. I work most days from home as an independent contractor, so I tend to keep an ear out for shenanigans going on in the neighborhood while most of the community is elsewhere. These noises included, but were not limited to, heavy metal music, banging on what sounded like pots and pans, occasional yelps, like that of a small dog, and loud laughing or crying. It was a bit hard to tell. I assumed that Ray's current housemate just had some alternative interests. Again, I'm in no position to judge. Granted, I have my own unusual hobbies. Initially, I let it go. When Ray would return, all the noises would cease, as if he had just walked in and turned the volume down on the whole household. I thought about bringing it up to him, but decided against it. Something about the whole thing irked me, but there was no evidence of any wrongdoings on Ray's part. What more could I do besides sit idly by and watch it all unfold? That was until one night last week. I was up in my bedroom getting settled in bed when I heard the softest, most muffled tapping noise. It came in increments. Tap, 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 pause. Tap, 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 pause. Tap, tap. At first, I simply ignored it, but after almost 15 minutes, the tapping had grown louder and seemingly more urgent, coming in more frequent increments. I found myself searching for the source, during which time the noise had almost driven me to the brink of insanity. I had almost decided that it was an auditory hallucination, courtesy of spending most of my days in silence when my eyes fell upon the closed curtains of the large windowsill. Perhaps the tapping was coming from outside, I peeked through the curtains in an attempt to scan the surroundings of my home. I had discovered Ray's upstairs bathroom window faced my bedroom window after an unfortunate incident involving me undressing unbeknownst to my audience, Ray, taking an innocent glance outside while brushing his teeth. I took a liking to keeping my curtains closed after that. It usually takes a moment for my eyes to adjust to the pitch darkness, given our town refuses to install street lights and Ray's lights are usually out by 9 p.m. This time, however, I noticed Ray's upstairs bathroom light was on despite the time being around 10 o'clock. And there was a silhouette inside, facing me. The dark figure was far too small to belong to Ray, so I assumed it was his blonde occupant, the girl I had seen earlier. Did Ray know she was upstairs? I had never seen any of his tenants use the upstairs bathroom. What was even more odd were her gestures. She was waving her arms around her head like a lunatic. At first, I thought she might have had a blow dryer in her hand, or at least something she was using to style her hair. But upon closer inspection, I realized her hands were empty. These frantic gestures continued for a moment before the bathroom light turned off and the house went dark. A chill ran down my spine. The whole scene was perturbing. That night, I laid awake in bed attempting to rationalize what I had seen. I began to theorize. Perhaps she was a recovering addict and suffering from withdrawals, or maybe she was trying to kill a fly. Yet, I couldn't imagine what scenario would cause her to act so strange, and I couldn't shake the feeling that she was in some sort of danger. I decided to talk to Ray the following morning about what I had seen. I wanted to make sure he was aware of it in case there was something he knew that I didn't, or maybe even something he could do to help with whatever was going on. "Morning, Ray," I greeted him as I approached his front porch. He was sitting in the same old rickety rocking chair, sipping from his usual ceramic mug. "Well, good morning, Miss Lisa." Ray's face broke out into his famous, dazzling grin. "What can I do for you this fine morning?" "I was just wondering about the new tenant of yours, the blonde one. I mean, who lives downstairs? I saw her in your upstairs bathroom last night and she seemed a bit agitated." The look on Ray's face changed for a moment so brief, if I had blinked, I would have missed it. His grin had vanished and his features were consumed by an expression so feverishly unhinged he was almost unrecognizable. But just as quickly as his face had become the monstrosity I just described, it morphed back into a look of concern, arched brows, earnest eyes, and a subtle frown. I had subconsciously taken a step back, attempting to make sense of what I had just seen. "Oh, geez, Miss Lisa, I can't apologize enough for the burden. I had no idea Daniela had bothered you last night. She must have been toying around in my medicine cabinet again. I'll have a talk with her and smooth everything over, I promise." I was still trying to process his sudden change in demeanor as I struggled to find a response. "Oh, no, Ray, it was no bother at all. I just wanted to make sure she was okay is all." "Oh, don't worry your blessed heart. She'll be fine. Just a case of night fever, I'm sure." And he gave me a smile, so dazzling it almost made me forget about the horrific face I had just seen him make just a few minutes prior. You know that feeling you get in the pit of your stomach when you know something is about to go horribly wrong? Like instead of butterflies in your stomach, it's moths or bees or something? That's precisely how I felt walking back to my house after the interaction with Ray. I spent the entire rest of the day glancing periodically outside my bedroom window, watching, waiting for the inevitable disaster my gut had anticipated. But all I saw were the usual activities. Ray leaving the house at 7 a.m., the usual ruckus coming from his home upon his departure, and his prompt arrival at 5 in the evening. Before I knew it, the sun had gone down and Ray's house was once again dark and quiet. I had finally decided to close my curtain at around 9, ceasing my incessant stalking after hours of monitoring the house, when I noticed a figure at the window once more. The blonde tenant was back. Only this time, she looked gangly, thin in a way I couldn't describe. Not glowing as she had been when I first laid eyes upon her first arrival, but skeletal. Her skin was taut and pale and sheen with sweat. Her hands were even cupping her face, displaying a distressed gesture. I could only compare her face in the window that night to the one painting by Edward Munch, The Scream, I believe it's called. The only difference was her mouth was closed. Her eyes were wide. I could see the whites of them above her irises, clear as day, despite our distance. The sheer look of her made my skin crawl. I waved my arms at her, instinctively, but stopped myself. This was my first attempt at contact, and I knew I couldn't blow it. I had to be discreet in case Ray was watching. She began lifting her arms slowly, a stark contrast to the woman I saw frantically flaunting her arms around before, and I noticed something. I squinted, attempting to identify the small marks on her body I was seeing. They seemed to be lacerations of sorts, around her wrists, near the bends of her forearm, and around her neck. I hadn't noticed them at first, but the closer I inspected her, the more concerned I grew. She was no longer the lively, panic-struck woman I had seen mere days ago. She now looked like a shell of herself, covered from head to toe in gashes and what seemed to be defense wounds. I felt the panic bubbling inside me. Something was very wrong here. I knew it before and I had known it then. I watched as she waved her arms back and forth robotically, as if they were being done mechanically. I was so overwhelmed with emotion that I shut the curtains abruptly. I couldn't bear watching. I didn't sleep the whole night. I picked at my cuticles feverishly. I sweat through my sheets. I was losing my mind, perhaps. The thought of my neighbor, who I had previously considered a genuine friend, doing something so horrendous to these women was nauseating. The thought of being helpless in the matter made me feel even worse. What could I do? Call the police? I had no tangible evidence. Nothing that could have been proven in court, at least. I was completely and utterly powerless. Days went by, and I hadn't seen the sickly blonde woman by the window in a while. I checked consistently, every night, to no avail. I had even begun checking periodically during the day, just in case, to no avail. I had begun to believe I had imagined the whole damn thing after about a week of no sightings. That was, until last week. I had been mindlessly flipping through the channels on TV when the story of one of our few local news stations caught my eye. The broadcast had mentioned a 22-year-old woman who had gone missing 2 weeks ago in the town just above ours, a recent graduate from Clemson University. An image of the woman appeared on the screen, and I felt my stomach drop into my small intensities. The woman who appeared on screen was a healthier, fuller version of a woman in Ray's window. Blonde, tanned, dressed in an orange tank top and jeans, short with a wide smile and dazzling blue eyes. Nothing at all like the gray, ghastly woman I had seen previous nights before, but still recognizable. I clutched my chest and gasped, instinctively attempting to avoid releasing a scream that would certainly wake up the entire neighborhood, including Ray himself. I knew I couldn't call the police without sufficient evidence. The cops in town were clueless and, quite frankly, lazy. They would do very little with a tip about a lonely lady who claims to have seen a missing woman in her neighbor's house. They'd pay Ray a visit and ask him about it. There would be no warrant obtained. There's no probable cause. It would be my word against his. Better yet, Ray would know that I'm onto him, and God only knows what he would do with that information. After hours of seething in my own dread on my living room couch, drowning in my own sweat, biting my fingernails until there was nothing left to bite, and weighing the pros and cons of calling the police while developing an alternative course of action, I came up with nothing. Just this morning, after a sleepless night on my part, I saw him from my back porch, out in his backyard, digging up holes in his garden with a rusty shovel. Gardening? I call over to him, attempting casual conversations. I grip the handle of my coffee cup a tad too tightly. Yup, I just got these peach trees. Want to plant them for the upcoming season. It's the perfect time of the year for them. His smile was too bright. He was practically shaking with excitement, and he continued shoveling loads of earth into the ground besides the hole. I remember thinking the hole had been a bit too big for a seed. It was so large, I reckon I could have easily fit inside of it. I had to hold myself to keep from trembling. Sure is, I replied, as I sipped my coffee shakily and turned my head back inside before I heard Ray call out to me. He looked up at me. No, look is not the right word. He saw into me, stared into my psyche with black, soulless eyes. It was a knowing look, one that said, I know that you know. I held my breath, preparing myself for the words that would exit his mouth, but all he said was, Have a great day, hon. And then he went back to digging. I think I'm almost out of time. I can see myself locked in Ray's bathroom, waving frantically to my vacant house just as Emery did. Except this time, there would be no one there to wave back.
Jesus fucking Christ. The fuck? No, thank you.
This one gave me the spooks, the creeps.
It gives me the chills.
Yeah. This one reminded me of, that show that we watched. Was it Jeffrey Dahmer?
I think so. was a fucked up show.
Yeah. So this one was a work of fiction.
Yes.
So just in case people are screaming at us, oh my god, call the police, call the police. No, it is a work of fiction, but I just thought that OP had like a really good writing style that like it really creeped me out.
Giving me the creepsies.
Yeah. And by the way, we had permission from OP, whose username is both ad 7659, to read the story.
Nice.
All right.
Okay. Back to me.
Yes.
I'm going to read another story from the subreddit. Ask Reddit, what's your best true spooky story?
Okay. Before I forget, I just want to mention this candle because I don't know if you are loving the smell of it.
Oh, it smells delicious over here.
It's apple caramel cinnamon, and this is not sponsored. This is just a company that one of my friends' moms makes. They make candles, they make bath bombs, lots of cute stuff that's perfect for the seasons that are coming up: fall, winter, Christmas, and stuff. So if you are in the GTA or she's near like the Etobicoke area and you want to support a small business, her Instagram is lux_aromatics, and they have a bunch of cutesy, very nice smelling stuff. I buy her candles every fall, every Christmas as well, and they're the only candles that I have lit around the house because they're 100% natural. I don't like to use like store-bought home scents candles. I like to use the natural stuff just because I feel like we're inhaling it and the fake stuff can't be good for you. So I really trust this brand, Lux Aromatics. So if you're in the GTA and you want some seasonal candles or bath bombs or anything, check them out.
I can leave a link down below for if you like.
Perfect.
Excellent. On to me.
Yes.
Okay. 4 years ago, I lived in a very large farmhouse that was converted into 2 apartments. The house was known as the Old Boys Home. It was used to house boys with behavioral issues, but was closed due to allegations of molestation. Anyway, I was living with my boyfriend and 3-year-old daughter at the time. My bedroom had a large fireplace that had been boarded up and painted over. I decided to push my bed up against it one day as I was rearranging things. It was like a headboard. That night, around 1 a.m., I heard a small voice saying, "Mom, Mom, Mommy." I sat up in bed but didn't see anything, so I reached over my boyfriend trying to grab my daughter and put her in our bed. I kept feeling around and I was hearing the voice, but I couldn't feel her. My boyfriend woke up and turned the bedside lamp on, asking me, "What the hell are you doing?" I explained that Amelia was trying to get into our bed and I was reaching for her, but there was nobody there. My daughter was sound asleep in her room. Then the next night came. At 1 a.m. again, my dog had started to whimper out at the door, so my boyfriend got up to take him outside. You know that feeling in bed when someone lies down next to you, where the bed pushes in and there is a warmth against your back? I felt that, so I assumed my boyfriend had come back to bed. I rolled over. My boyfriend wasn't in the bed, and I felt the fucking bed release pressure. Whatever was laying next to me had gotten up in that second. I moved my bed the next day to the other side of the room, and I never had another incident in the 2 years I remained in the house.
What the fuck? That's terrifying.
Yeah.
I've had sleep paralysis before, where when you used to work on Saturdays.
Yeah.
And you would leave. I've had sleep paralysis that you come back and it just feels like you are in the room with me. And I know, I feel like I'm awake, but I'm not. It was really, really creepy. I used to have it a lot, actually.
Yeah, I remember you telling me about that. It's creepy.
Really, really creepy.
So glad I don't have to work on Saturdays anymore. Love not having to go to work on a Saturday.
It's very nice.
It is nice.
Do you want to do another one since that was quite short?
Yeah, I'll do another one. So another commenter says, I've had several dreams similar to what I am posting. I've been a caver in Florida for about 13 years, since I was about 6, and I have been to a lot of caves. I've never been afraid before this to go in one. When I was about 7 or 8 years old, I started having this reoccurring dream. I would have it at least twice a year, always the same, even though I would realize I was dreaming after the first few iterations. I would fall asleep and dream of being in a cave and going into this little hole in the bottom. Inside, I would see a 10 to 15 foot long corridor about 2 to 4 feet high. At the end, it would always turn left, and I always saw a bent red stop sign at the end, like someone ripped it off the top 2 feet and just tossed it in. But I would always follow the corridor. I would turn and walk past the sign despite being scared, despite many times knowing what was there, and the corridor would start descending, quickly opening up into a large vertical chamber with the path leading down in a corkscrew. Everything became blurry at this point, but it was always the same. I saw trash scattered on the walls. I saw the pit leading down to a curved floor. I saw things, undefined, animals or people or something else at the bottom. And I saw my family, each with one of the things, being tortured and killed, every time. And I could never do anything. After I saw that, I'd be stuck for a few seconds until I felt more than saw everything turn and look at me. And I would wake up. Not like a normal dream where you just drift to consciousness or a nightmare where you bolt up in fear, but like something pushed me out, like I wasn't supposed to be there. So I have this dream multiple times a year until I turned 15. I did tell a friend about the dream before what happens next. My father decided to take us to some caves we had never been to before, one of which was Dog Drop. It was likely named so because someone either threw their pet in there or a coyote fell in and the body was later discovered. Dog Drop had a roughly 30-foot rappel straight down to enter. I went down with my brother while my father waited at the top. There was a hole in the ground. I started to feel uneasy, though I didn't know why, so I followed my brother into the hole. I felt worse as I moved down, and when I looked up, I saw the same corridor, the same turn, the same wall, the same bottles at the corner, and I instantly was hit with this overwhelming sense of nausea and fear and being watched, and everything was screaming at me to leave. I froze, and I must have made some noise because my brother turned around and asked what was wrong. I managed to say that I wanted to leave now and climbed up as quickly as I could, followed immediately by my brother. We packed up and left. Never have gone back and never will. Haven't told anyone what actually happened. Just said I wasn't feeling well, and they forgot pretty quickly. The thing that really makes it creepy for me is I have never had the dream again. Year after year, I would have it constantly. But it just stopped after that. But I still remember it all. And I still feel afraid, almost an external fear, when I think of it.
That's crazy. Premonitions like that are like super creepy.
Reminds me of all like the premonition dreams I had.
Yeah.
That we've talked about before.
Yeah.
I'm getting the chills just reading these. I didn't get scared when I read them the first time. Now I already know how they go, and I'm getting scared.
Yeah.
It's the spooky setup that we have here.
I know.
You went all out. It's dark and creepy and spooky in here.
Yep.
Oh my God.
All right. This one comes from Paranormal. My dad crawled out from under my bed. I was around 6 when it happened. My parents had tucked me in for bed. I live in the rural countryside, so nighttime is very quiet, no sounds of cars. It's usually very peaceful. I was laying on my back when suddenly I heard the sound of long nails scratching the wood under my bed. The reason this incident sticks out to me is because I can still remember the feeling of my heart dropping out of my stomach and feeling paralyzed with fear. I was about to call out to my parents when my dad crawled out from under my bed and stood up in the dark, looking at me. He said, "You forgot to say your prayers," and then walked out of my room. I was understandably shocked. I did not leave my bed afterwards and must have fallen asleep at some point. My dad would normally tell me to say my prayers before bed, so this seemed like something he would say, but I have no idea what would possess him to hide under my bed. My dad denies ever doing this. I brought it up numerous times over the years, but he has never admitted to it. I never really considered until recently that he definitely doesn't have nails long enough to make the deep scratching sound I heard. What do you guys think? Maybe I fell asleep and had a vivid dream. I also considered it could be something paranormal.
Fuck, I'm out of that house. Fuck, no, something's crawling out from underneath my bed. Oh, I do remember as a kid being terrified. My bed when I was a kid was like 4 feet off the ground. It was like an elevated bed.
Oh my God.
It had like storage underneath it. But as a kid, you could kind of like play underneath it. But like, I think it was like a little play area. It wasn't like bunk beds, but it was an elevated bed. Like, I think so. Like, my parents, they didn't have to like bend down to like tuck me in and stuff. It was kind of at like, chest level. So it was like 4 feet or something like that. But it just left a lot of room underneath the bed for scary things. Mm-hmm. And I remember how many times have you pulled the covers above your head to fall asleep?
Never.
What?
No.
You've never pulled the blanket and like gone to sleep underneath the blanket?
No, actually.
Holy fuck, so many times. That's how I used to always fall asleep. I would be so scared. I would pull the blanket up over my head.
I think I would be scared of suffocating.
No. I like the warm. I liked how it got warm and stuffy.
I never, ever, ever even dare put a little toe outside of the covers.
I would
never.
I would pull the blanket underneath my feet.
Yeah.
I would need the blanket wrapped underneath my feet. Like I would like fold it underneath so that my feet were like on top of the blanket. Yeah. Burritoed it. So I would tuck it in. I would tuck it in on the sides. I would seal myself in my blanket, and then I would pull it up above my head, and then I would tuck it underneath my head. I would burrito the shit out of that thing.
Oh my gosh.
And then I was in my safety tent.
That's so funny.
Okay, my grandparents had the most terrifying bedroom. So my grandparents, you've been to it.
That house was terrifying.
That house was terrifying. So
I don't even know how I slept.
So my grandparents' house is this old farmhouse. Very old. Like the foundation is made out of boulders, rocks, circular rocks, not like center blocks. Like it's so old. This is how old it is. And I remember so there's built before drywall. And what they did before drywall, when they would take these like 1 inch thin strips of wood and they would run they would have about like a centimeter apart and it'd be a strip like this. And they would just be strips horizontal across the whole wall. And then they would plaster to try and fill that gap. And the bedroom that I had, there was right at wall level. I guess my dad had it and he must have like picked at the wall through his childhood, but it was empty. There was no plaster there. It was chiseled away, so you would just see the wood strips that had like a centimeter long thing that just went into the wall. And it was probably like this big. It was like a foot and a half by like 2 feet or something. So it was like a lot of like 5 or 6 strips.
And just like emptiness in between.
Emptiness. You could put your fingers into the wall.
No.
Things could come out of the wall.
No.
Like bees and spiders and ants, that I would have these nightmares of things coming out.
Oh my God.
So what do? Do you roll? Where do you sleep? Because do you look at it the whole night? That's scary.
God.
You can't look at it. That's scary as fuck. Something might be coming out of it. Do you roll away and let it be at your back so something can pull you in? I used to have nightmares every time I slept over. And I would go to my grandparents for like 2 weeks in between, or a week every time between Christmas, Boxing Day to New Year's. I would always stay at my grandparents for that week. In the summer, I'd go there for a week or two. I always had to sleep in there. And then, to make matters worse in this fucking room, it was the one room that had the attic access. So there would be the little panel up in the ceiling.
Attics
for it to go into the attic. And where was that? That was on the opposite side of the bed. So I was staring at it the whole time. And then right beside the attic covering, there was a ladder. And on the ladder, and on the, because the ladder to get into the attic, right? So the ladder would lean up against the wall. And then resting on the ladder, resting on the back of the door. There's the hooks on the back of the door. Resting on the back of the door was a Wile E. Coyote a stuffed animal. You know Wile E. Coyote?
I don't think so.
Like from the Roadrunner?
Okay, yeah.
The guy that chases the Roadrunner?
Oh, yeah.
So it was this really old stuffed one, like a hard stuffed one, not like the soft, cute ones they had nowadays. Like it was like a creepy motherfucking stuffed coyote that was like dusty and old and hanging on the back. And at nighttime, it just looked like this little thing on the back of the wall. That was the scariest room. I used to have nightmares.
Is that the one that we slept in?
The time that it is that same room. But the time that you came around, it was fixed.
Oh, okay.
Because when I moved in there in grade 9, my uncle renovated it for me. They drywalled.
I was going to say, I don't remember the holes in the wall.
There wasn't holes in the wall. They drywalled it and they painted it black and green. And then...
Still, that place was so creepy. I honestly don't know how I slept there.
That place was creepy. And like the difference too is like you go out there and you turn the lights off in the house.
Pitch black.
Pitch black.
Pitch black.
So I would go there to work on on my car in the garage. And the garage is like a little bit down the hill. Sometimes I wouldn't even go back up to the farmhouse. I'm like 22. And I'm like, I am sleeping on this car chair, like the car seat that's no longer in the car. It's just in the garage.
Yeah.
I'm just going to sleep on this car seat because I don't want to go up to that old farmhouse and like have to turn on the lights and go up to the bedroom and go into that bed. I'm just going to pull a jacket over me and I'm going to leave the lights on and I'm going to sleep inside this garage.
I feel like now
I don't want to go up there.
Even now at 30, you probably would too, right?
It's scary as fuck. So everything is pitch black. So you're walking up to the farmhouse, you can't even see anything. And then you hear the howls of the coyotes. No. And then the house had an extension on the back. Oh my God. The house had an extension on the back.
I remember walking through that.
Creepy.
So creepy.
So creepy. And it had an old wood furnace that you had to go downstairs, put the wood in. And sometimes I would live there. My grandma and grandpa, they'd be like, go put another block of wood in. If you want to be warm, you're cold, go put a block of wood in. The stairs to get back up were old wooden stairs that when you're like, you could put your hand through. There was nothing like stopping. So I would go down there, put the wood in, and then I would run up the stairs so fast because I'm like, anybody could put their hand through and grab your leg as you're going up.
No.
And then there was another door in between that stairway that then went to the extension. So there's like the one door went down to the stairs. And when you went into the extension, that's where the back freezers were. So if I needed to get any freezer food, and my grandma kept all the snacks, all the Pepsi and the Coke and the fruit roll-ups, everything was back there. So if you want any of that stuff, you had to go there. Guess where the light switch was for that?
All the way at the end.
It was in the middle of the room on a string.
Oh, yes.
It was the string lights.
Yeah, I feel like my Nana's house used to have those too.
So late at night, you had to like, even when you turn the light on the kitchen, the door swings closed behind you. You had to run forward and try to find the string light in pitch black. There's no ambient light coming from the outside street lights. There's none of that. It's pitch black.
And you also didn't have phones, right?
No phones, no nothing. You're swinging your hand for the swing for the string to pull down the string, and then one little light. And then there was another back section of the back section for the far freezer. Even worse going back there.
Oh my God.
Oh, it was it creaked and squeaked and the floor creaked and that whole place was a freaking nightmare when I was a kid.
God.
It was still scary to this day.
I don't like
Nothing paranormal ever happened to me. I never had any experiences.
It just
gave me the creeps. It was colder, it's black, creepy, scary. The whole house was scary.
Man.
Like my grandma went to bed. I'm like, okay, I guess I'm going to bed. I'm not staying downstairs by myself.
Yeah, fuck no. Okay, there is an edit. Sorry, didn't mean to cut you off.
No, go ahead. I forgot we were on a story.
Thank you all for your input / stories. They were very creepy themselves. To answer a few questions I saw frequently. No, I can't remember if I asked my parents about the incident the next morning, but since then I have asked repeatedly over the last 20-ish years, and my dad has never owned up to it. I believe at this point that my dad couldn't have done it because, 1, My dad likes scary stuff and would absolutely take credit for a prank that scared me so bad. 2. My parents had been gone from my room for probably about 10 minutes before I heard the scratching. It's possible my dad could have stayed behind, but he could not easily fit under my bed without me noticing. 3. He's not really a drinker, so I doubt he was passed out on the floor. I'd like to believe it was sleep paralysis like many of you have theorized. However, that would be my one and only time experiencing sleep paralysis. There is definitely a chance it could have been something more sinister, and it's something I hope to never encounter again.
Oh my God. Okay, hypothetically, if we ever do have kids in the future, hypothetically, is it going too far by being like, okay, honey, you put the kids to bed tonight. I'm going to go crawl underneath their bed.
Oh, come on.
Like 10, 15 minutes later after you've left the room, I'm like, okay. And then you crawl yourself out. I crawl out from underneath the bed.
Absolutely not.
Is that traumatizing to the kids?
Yes, you're fucked. Absolutely not.
That's not a funny prank?
No, that's not funny. That's so traumatic.
Oh my God. Yeah.
No, that's not okay.
Okay. Like Andrew?
No. You would... No.
Andrew.
You're fucked.
Chris did it.
They would never. They would literally never.
Dressed, put the clown mask on.
Why do you like to traumatize kids? That's weird. You're a weirdo.
How old could the kid be where it's okay? Like 5's too young, but what if they're like 12?
No. Maybe 12. Maybe 12. I don't know.
My turn?
Yep.
Oh, man. Okay, so I'm going to go back to my thread. We'll give you another story from the Ask Reddit thread, okay? I have a tale. This is my parents' story, but it is so good the internet needs it. Sorry for the extreme length. This is a 2-hour story when my parents tell it. They remember it more vividly than I could type it.
Jeez.
This is 100% real. If you think otherwise, bugger off.
Scram.
Get out of here.
No, have you seen the TikTok?
No.
Whatever.
Back in the 80s, my parents had just gotten married, graduated from college, and had my big brother. They moved into a small house in a very affluent neighborhood north of Milwaukee. The house was surprisingly in their budget. Again, they just graduated from college and med school with a little one. But the house was the smallest on the block. My parents made an offer that was a few under the asking price. 2 other couples offered more than the asking. There was a bidding war. However, the old man that owned the house rejected both of those offers and said he wanted my parents to have it. He said he and his late wife would have both agreed that it was the right thing to do. My folks were super grateful and are extremely excited to be living in the neighborhood. There are many youngsters, so my brother has lots of playtime. Life was very good. Then, shit starts going down. The first thing was with the basement. So, during this time, my mom stayed at home with my brother and my dad was getting his practice started. He worked super late and was only home on Sundays basically. My mom did laundry in the basement and one day she was walking up the stairs. A red light at the bottom of the stairs turned on. Now, I am told this is a super bright light and the switch for it was taken out long ago. It was almost like a fallout shelter emergency light with a cage on it. My mom didn't know what to think. So she starts going downstairs to investigate, and the light turns off. She figures that maybe it was some sort of surge. The next day, she goes downstairs again, comes up, and the light is on again. Again, starts walking back down, and it turns off. She does not shrug it off this time. She waits a bit at the bottom of the stairs, and then walks back upstairs. The light turns on, and she runs down this time to catch it. Only this time, it starts flashing like a strobe light before she can even reach the bottom. She noped the fuck out of the house so quickly with my brother and didn't go back for the rest of the day. The light never turned on for my dad or turned on again after that day. After the red light thing, my mom is naturally shook up. She is scared to go downstairs without my dad, and rightfully so. But there was something that started before the red light but escalated after. Knocking. My parents figure this was originally just natural sounds of the house as it was fairly old. It would be very sporadic and very infrequent until one night. My parents were in bed chatting about the day, bills, etc. They then start hearing knocking. It started in their room under the bed, then on the walls and the ceiling. It would be about 30 seconds apart and they could not find a source. Then it sounded like the knocking was outside their room, so they got up and tried following the sound to find where it was. They went all over the house trying to figure out where it came from. Every time they thought they found the source, it would jump back to a different side of the room. They eventually were in the foyer/living room and tracked the knocking super frequently and super loud to the foyer closet. My mom had a fireplace poker in hand, and my dad had a bat. He crept towards the closet, and as he reached for the doorknobs, a voice called out to them, "Knock, knock." He swung the doors open. There was nothing there, and all the knocking stopped. My parents could do nothing but stare at each other. Neither of them slept that night. After the red light and the knock-knock, my parents are wary of this house. My mom is on the verge of a breakdown and not dealing with this well at all. Remember, she is in the house all day with this nonsense. My dad is usually more skeptical towards this kind of stuff, but he knows something is wrong and thinks my mom is totally justified in her feelings. Well, we fast forward a few weeks, maybe even a month. It is a normal night like any other. My parents are asleep in their room, my brother in his. In the middle of the night, my mom suspects it was around 2 to 3 a.m. but can't be certain. My parents wake up to a huge thud. Immediately.
That literally scared me. Sorry, you literally scared me. It was so loud.
Immediately, my parents jump up and hear my brother is awake calling for them. They rush into his room and he is laying down in the very center of the room on the floor with his blanket perfectly taut and draped on him, as though he was tucked into bed, but on the ground at least 5 feet from his bed. My parents pick him up and ask what happened. He responds, pointing to the closet, "It pushed me.
No.
The fox pushed me." My dad opens the closet, rifles through everything for an animal, and of course finds nothing. So this is weird, right? Why would a 3-year-old say such a thing? Well, in this moment, my parents remembered the last name of the old man that sold them the house. Fox. I shit you not. My parents freaked out on this. There were too many things going on. My mom refused to let herself or my brother stay in the house, especially since she was now pregnant with my sister. My dad decided he was going to take care of this. Again, he is not a superstitious man. He is a doctor and a man of logic. However, he knew there was something going on in this house. A night or two after the fox incident, my dad sat down in the living room and had a talk with the spirit of the house. He said this, "I don't know if you're real. I do not know if you are Mrs. Fox, but I do know this. You are going to stop. We are a peaceful and loving family. If you are Mrs. Fox, your husband would be ashamed of you. He wanted us to have our family here because he knew you would want it too. Just as you raised your family here, I want to do the same. You may stay here as long as you like, but you cannot do this to us anymore. I am sorry for your passing and for your pain, but you cannot take it out on us. My wife is pregnant, and you are causing her loads of stress. You even went after my son. This will stop, or I will seek out someone who will make it stop. Thank you. Good night." After this, nothing bad happened to my family again. There are no lights, no knocks, no more foxes. But, and this is the craziest thing, there was one final thing. In a wooden cabinet that my mom bought at a neighborhood garage sale a few days after they moved into the house, there was a card, an anniversary card. It said, "Happy anniversary, blank and blank, Fox." This was found 2 days after my parents' anniversary in June, after they moved the cabinet to the other side of the room. They had owned the cabinet since they moved into the house and had not seen the old man since they bought the house either. My parents have moved many times over the years and lost the card inevitably. We still have the cabinet It sits in our cabin to this day. The end.
So wait, sorry, I'm confused about the card. It showed up.
Sorry, so the card said happy anniversary, parents' name and parents' name. From Fox.
But like after they've seen him, like it was just
Like after all that, they found the card in an armoire or cabinet that they bought from a neighbor's garage sale.
Oh.
He said, he makes an edit. He said, I did have my parents' name in the card, but then he removed them. That's why it was blank and blank.
Oh, interesting. So they bought the armoire from someone else and it happened to have that letter in it.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Cabinet. I don't know why I said armoire, but cabinet.
Okay.
There's a small edit that he forgot to add in the original story. For when his brother was found in the middle of the room, after all the dust had settled, my parents started renovating. They wanted to put carpet in my brother's room, so they tore up the tile/fake flooring stuff, and to quote my dad, right where your fucking brother was laying on the Fox night, there was a blood stain. Mrs. Fox had died in the house, in my brother's room.
Oh!
She was very ill, but fell while trying to replace a light in the room.
Oh my god. That was the craziest one yet. That's insane. No, thank you. That's insane. I'm not sleeping tonight. Why be a mean ghost?
Why not? What else can you do as a ghost?
I feel like I would be a nice ghost.
I would not.
You would haunt people?
Fuck yeah.
Like, maybe it could be fun.
What else do you have to entertain yourself with?
That's true.
All right, that was the last story that I had from that Ask Reddit thread. Oof.
All right, this one comes from r/ghost stories. The horror of babysitting. I would never go back to babysitting again. This incident happened to me when I was in university. I was supposed to babysit my niece that day because her parents planned for a business dinner with their work colleagues. They told me they would be back late and one of them would send me back home the next day. I agreed to babysit my niece without any doubts that day. When I arrived at their house, I was given a list of things to do for that day with my niece. My niece was about 12 at the time, so I did not have any issues with her helping me out with some house chores that day. We started off by drying their clothes in the garden, and she started narrating her school stories to me. We were having so much fun together that we decided to have a break and make some Oreo milkshakes that she had just learned from YouTube that day. As we were making the milkshake, I noticed how my niece talked a lot about a girl named Sarah O'Neill from her class. Based on my niece's narrations about Sarah, I thought she was a lovely girl. Then I suddenly stopped and looked at her in shock when she said Sarah was with her now and would come out only at night. At first, I thought my niece was joking and quickly brushed off my doubts about Sarah. We continued making the milkshakes and my niece continued with her stories. Curiosity got me asking her about Sarah, and I noticed my niece's facial reaction changed suddenly. "What happened there? Are you okay?" I asked my niece as I looked at her. She just nodded her head in silence and continued to drink her milkshake quietly. She turned up from her drink and said, "She doesn't like you." My heart stopped a bit hearing my niece utter such words to me, as if Sarah was there with my niece in the kitchen. I tried to calm myself down and asked her once more about Sarah. "This Sarah that you're talking about, how does she look like?" I gathered my courage to ask my niece one last time. "She has pretty, blonde hair and about my height," my niece casually described her as she continued drinking her milkshake. So I took a deep breath and smiled at her. I thought my niece was pulling my leg when she told me that Sarah lives with her and plays with her during the night. We managed to finish our milkshakes and quickly continued with our given house chores. We did some cleaning, putting the clothes for the wash, and lastly, some dusting. My niece and I were exhausted after completing the house chores, so we decided to watch a movie just before heading to bed that night. I told my niece to choose a movie as I wanted to make some hot drinks for her and myself. I came back with my hot drinks in my hand and realized she had already chosen the movie from Netflix and was waiting for me. "Sarah likes this movie. She told me to choose this movie, but she also said if you don't like it, you can change," my niece said as she sat comfortably on the couch. Again, I could feel a knot in my stomach, and my heart was beating fast upon hearing my niece utter Sarah's name casually. "Where is this Sarah? Can I see her?" I played along with my niece. I told you she will only come out at night. Now she is sleeping. My niece didn't even flinch a little. Now is the night, sweetheart. So where is Sarah? I pushed my luck again with my niece. My niece smiled at me suddenly and said, She's right behind you. I quickly turned around and saw nothing behind me. My heart was thumping hard in my chest as I looked back at my niece. There's no one there, honey, I managed to speak up. She says she doesn't like you and she wants you to go home now, my niece uttered at me as she looked behind me. Okay, time for bed, I said as I ushered her upstairs to her room. My niece shares her room with her parents in the main room, so they have a huge bed that would be shared by her parents and her 3 sisters who have gone for their school camp that day. I put my niece to bed that night, and my niece suddenly asked me if she would play hide and seek before bed. No, it's too late, and you should go to bed now. My voice was stern as I turned her down. That is when my niece looked at me with piercing eyes that scared me. I backed up a little as I noticed how stiff she was looking at me without any words uttered or any body movements. I told you to go home. Go home now, my niece growled in another voice at me. Her voice was much deeper and scarier when she yelled at me to go home. I quickly got down from the bed and rushed for my handbag for my phone. My niece was still sitting on her bed, but she was chanting something under her breath in a gibberish language. Her body swayed back and forth as she mumbled those words under her breath. I reached for my phone fast and called her parents. I narrated the whole story to them and told them to come back as soon as possible. I was worried if this problem did not be solved immediately, it might get out of hand. Then I heard laughing and giggling all of a sudden in the room, which made me turn around in nervousness. My niece was talking to someone, laughing and giggling as if there was someone with her on the bed. I watched her laugh and talk alone in horror as I waited for her parents to arrive that night. Her parents came back that night and asked me what happened again, and I told them everything. I told them about Sarah O'Neill and that she would only come out at night to play with their daughter. Without hesitation, her parents immediately called for a priest from a nearby church. I wondered how they were rooted to the ground with fear when I uttered Sarah's name. Sarah O'Neill recently died in a car crash 2 weeks back, my sister-in-law explained as her voice broke.
Yeah, fuck that. I'm out. I'm fucking gone. I'm leaving, Andrew. I am sorry, buddy. You're fucking possessed,
No, same.
bro.
I was actually picturing myself in this situation. If this ever happened to me, I would leave the house. Like, I would not stay in that house.
Do we take the kid or we'd leave the kid?
I don't know.
It's attached to him.
I don't know.
So do we, like, Andrew's 5. Can he fend for himself for a little bit? I don't know what to do here.
They're not going to hurt the kid. I feel like I don't know.
Hopefully.
They're bonding. It seems they're friends. So.
Holy fuck. I'm just thinking, like, what if, like Andrew starts, we're babysitting Andrew in a couple years and he starts talking about an imaginary friend.
No, but that's the thing with kids.
Fuck.
They can see, like, they have more intuition than we do with, spirits.
Hypothetically have heard that they're more just like dogs are.
Yeah.
They're on the plane of spiritual plane of the something. Holy fuck.
Yeah.
No, I'm a biatch.
No, I don't like this one.
Oh.
And this one was real.
Oh, fuck off.
Yeah.
I thought this was one of your stories.
No, this one was, the ghost stories is real paranormal experiences.
I'm fucking out. I'm done. I'm out. I'm never babysitting your kid again. Holy shit.
Yeah.
I'm done.
So scary.
We need to take a break from the scary stories.
What? No, come on. We're just getting started.
Nope. I have an Am I the Asshole story.
Okay.
It's on theme with spookiness.
Fine.
You're not going to get chills from this one, though.
Fine.
Am I the asshole for telling a spooky story to my young grandkids? Last week, my wife and I invited our daughter, son-in-law, and their 2 children, ages 5 and 4, to our home for dinner. We live down a long, winding driveway in a neighboring county, and our living room overlooks a large forest. This evening was particularly cloudy and windy, which was making the house creak. We all ate and had a nice time, and then the adults moved into the living room to chat while the children played in the other room. As the evening wore on, my daughter and son-in-law said that it was getting late and they needed to get going soon. But I insisted on telling my grandkids a spooky story. I love ghost stories at their age, and I remember many a campout where my father told these sort of tales to my brother and me. Well, I turned out all the lights and lit some candles. The wind was really howling now, and it set the scene perfectly. I was about midway through the story when a mischievous thought entered my head. The character in the story was lost in the wood and heard mysterious sounds. I whispered. The air was all of a sudden very still, and the man wandered through the dark forest, like the one out there. I gestured to the woods behind our home. The kids had their backs to the woods, and as they turned around, I banged my hands hard on the wooden table. The kids shrieked, and the younger ones started to cry as they ran into their parents' arms. Everyone gave me a dirty look as I howled with laughter. I tried continuing the story, but I had a wicked case of the giggles. Long story short, my daughter and son-in-law turned on all the lights, and he said, I think Grandpa's had enough fun. Time for us to go. He was staring right at me and scowling. I couldn't believe what a poor sport he had been. I was just trying to have a little fun after all. After they had left, my wife tore into me. She said that what I had done would be cruel with anyone's kids, but with my own grandkids, it was beyond the pale. I told her that she was overreacting and not managing her emotions in a proper manner. I also reminded her that the weather conditions that night were perfect for such a story. She went to bed in a huff. Well, this week, I got a call from my daughter that the kids haven't been sleeping well since I told that story, and she thinks it would be best for them not to visit for a while. I was stunned. I couldn't believe that such an innocuous moment from so many nights ago was still sticking in my grandkids' craws. I just want my daughter to see things from my point of view, but she seems blinded by her own self-righteousness and would rather inflict emotional damage. My wife says that I need to apologize, but I feel like someone else should be apologizing to me. I feel bad that we won't have our fun dinners anymore, but I don't feel like I'm to blame even a little bit for the story. Am I the asshole?
Kind of. Yeah. I think so.
A little bit.
A little bit. Yeah. I mean, like, he did it all in good fun. But once they start crying, like, you know you fucked up.
Okay, but like as a parent, and you give your dad permission to say a spooky story, how do you think a spooky story is going to end?
True.
Like, your kids are going to be scared at the end of the spooky story. If you didn't want your kids to be scared of the spooky story, then you should tell your dad, no, we don't want them hearing any spooky stories.
That's true.
Regardless of if he banged or not, I feel like that's part of the spooky story experience.
That's true.
So I don't know. He's rated the asshole. Everybody's commenting, you're the asshole. Yeah, but like one of the top comments, yeah, you're the asshole. I get you're just trying to have a bit of fun, but they're small kids, and scaring the crap out of them like that isn't cool. Knowing how it's impacted those kids and that they're not sleeping well, you, as the adult, should be trying to make right instead of acting like the aggrieved party here.
Yeah.
You tried to play a joke, it went bad. Now act like an adult and make this right for the sake of your grandchildren.
Yeah, I will say...
Yeah. Sorry.
I will say he doesn't deserve an apology. Like, what does he want an apology for?
He definitely deserves an apology. Listen, bro, no, he definitely deserves to give an apology.
Oh, give an apology. Bro, but he said he wanted an apology.
Yeah, I don't get that. I don't get that. I don't think you're the asshole. You're a little bit of the asshole because you did the banging, which was more than the parents expected. But at the end of that's the best part.
That is,
the spooky story is giving them a little bit of a scare, kind of turning it into, that kind of thing. So as the parent, you give your dad permission, you give grandpa permission to tell the kids a scary story. You got to be okay that your kids are going to be spooked afterwards.
I feel like he's only the asshole because of how he's handling it afterwards.
I would agree with that.
He's not the asshole for saying a scary story and doing the banging. I feel like the banging isn't even like...
You still got to apologize for scaring the kids. You had the intention of scaring them, and that's fine, and it's all in good fun, but you got to apologize. You know they're going to be upset. You're giving the apology because you're Canadian, and it's the sake of giving the apology. You know what I mean? It's like, oh, I'm so sorry you're scared. But you still have to be sincere with your apology. Yes. You still have to be, I'm sorry, just a story.
And just reaffirm that it's fake, like...
Yeah, you got to help them get over the scare. Yeah. So... Is that on theme for you?
Not really, but...
It was spooky.
Not really, but...
Listen, it was about spooky.
All right.
I told Teresa I had some Am I the Assholes, and she's like, how can you have Am I the Assholes? I'm like, we need something to give us a laugh.
I don't think so.
Because I've had way too many scares.
I don't think so.
I'm shivering over here. I've had too many. I needed to break it up a little bit. That was good.
Okay. Well, I have a really long one.
Oh, no.
It was posted 5 years ago in
no.
Paranormal.
Oh, fuck.
And just for the record, I've only read one fiction story, which was the one with the... I don't want people to think that they're all fictional. But
okay.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, you'll tell us after, right?
Yes, I'll tell you after if it's fictional. This is real.
Fuck.
It comes from paranormal. Paranormal is real.
Oh, fuck.
Okay. My experiences as a crime scene cleaner. To start out, you need a little backstory to show how I got into the situation. When I got out of high school around 2003, finding a new job was difficult, so I took whatever horrible job I could get by. When I found a job cleaning fire and water damage full-time, I was excited to have steady income and start saving, but this quickly turned into a nightmare that I had to endure for almost 2 years. The company I worked for put me on my first job, which was a water damage claim where a basement flooded with sewage. So after a few days of work, we finished and it was on the next job. My boss then called me into his office the next morning and told me about a special crew that he was setting up and asked if I would be the crew leader supervising 3 other guys that were just fired. I found this strange as I had only been working there a total of 3 days, but figured my work ethic was already paying off and I would get a raise. I only made $10 an hour to start. Not only did I not get the raise, but I got no training in the new position other than a work van with cleaning material, and the phone numbers for the 3 new guys that also were hired in to do the fire/water damage cleanup. My boss told me what tools were best to use and what cleaning products to use to sanitize, along with where everything was located in the van, with hazmat suits and respirators, but he was vague about what kind of things I would clean up. He just said the situations were always different, and I would get detailed instructions each job. He called my position CSS crew leader. The boss told me that I would never have to see the deceased, as the coroner would have their remains gone by the time my crew got there, and to use my logic to determine what needed to be removed from the homes and what could be cleaned. The first job I had in my new position, which my boss told me about when I got to the office, was cleaning up the remains of an elderly man and woman who died in their house and had been laying in the chair. When we arrived, the coroner had me come inside to show me a few things that were considered hazardous material and needed to be removed due to the risk of disease. I guess my boss knew a few people from the county coroner's office, and much of the work came from their recommendations. Not only was the deceased still in the house, but was fully visible to me and the other guy, and you could smell the rot through the masks as the house had no AC, and this was mid-June. The coroner was backed up and waiting on additional people to show up to load the body as it was falling apart, and I call the body it because I honestly couldn't tell if it was male or female, and I was trying not to look too long as it was disturbing. The other 3 guys I worked with handled it well, but 2 got sick from the smell and had to go outside to puke. We all waited outside after the coroner showed us the chair, the fluids that leaked into the carpet, the basement where the fluids went through the subfloors and puddled on some boxes in the basement. The coroner's support arrived and took the deceased out, and me and the crew started working. After about 5 minutes, weird things started to happen, the first of which was when I began to disassemble the chair. I had removed the back of the chair and was putting it into the special hazmat bags that I was given, and the base started to rock when I was about 10 feet away, putting the bag with the back of the chair by the front door. Nobody else was in the same room as the other guys were in the basement dealing with the moving boxes. I brushed it off and took apart the base of the chairs as much as I could, and when I got into the bag, I got a chill up my back, and then began feeling sick. I just figured it was the shock of what I was cleaning hitting me and pushed on, even though the chill was strange as I was very hot in a full hazmat in June. Next was removing the carpet and assessing the floor to see if it would be able to be cleaned or if I had to remove a section of the floor. So I called the boss to ask him, and he told me to just pour the special cleaner on the area to soak into the floorboards and it would be fine. So I got it out of the truck where he said it was and brought it inside. When I got inside, all 3 of the guys in the basements were scrambling to get out of the basement, tripping over each other, and all 3 ran outside. When I asked them what was up, all 3 said there was someone in the cluttered basement and they assumed it was a homeless person or a junkie. Detroit had many issues with these kinds of things. I listened at one of the open windows to the basement. It's kind of the first thing we did when we started working. Open any windows possible, prop the doors open, so maybe someone got inside then or possibly before we got there and was hiding. After listening a few minutes and hearing nothing, me and another one of the workers went inside, armed with a mag light and a piece of metal fence post, and searched the basement. Nothing was down there but the footprints of the shoe covers we used. But when we started up the stairs, we heard a horrible hacking cough from somewhere in the basement. When we looked for it, there was nothing. But the corner of the basement had a bunch of dust stirred up like someone was moving things very recently that weirded us both out. We called the guys back in and they got back to the boxes, but all of them kept feeling like they were being touched while throwing away material from the boxes that got fluids on them. I went back to my upstairs job, but found that the cleaner I put next to the floorboards was gone, and I started getting frustrated as it was the only jug I had of this cleaner, and I clearly remember it being set next to the area before the guys ran upstairs, and my attention was redirected. I began to take out trash, figuring I would find it eventually, or the basement guys took it for the floor, and I found it on its side, behind the bag that had the back of the chair. This is impossible. There were like 6 other bags in front of this one near the front door, and this was a gallon bottle of cleaner. Again, I got a chill, but this one was brought on by what sounded like a whisper that I could not make out the words to. I cleaned the floorboards and moved the trash. The job was complete. That night, each member of my crew had a dream about an older man telling us that we were not welcome in his home, touching his belongings, and we need to leave. In my dream, I was alone in his house. The old man cried and told me I was destroying his things and he couldn't replace anything. He was trying to push me out of his house, but it was like I was ignoring him. Even when he would push me and scream at me, no reaction from me. He then threw my cleaner into the garbage pile I had made by the front door, exactly where I found it. 2 of the 3 guys in my crew told me their dreams about the old man pushing them as they went through the boxes of ruined pictures and other old stuff that needed to be thrown out due to the risk of disease from his fluids. They also said it was like they had no control and were on autopilot. They said they were so sad but couldn't do anything. The thing that got me about the dreams of the other 2 guys was they both said the man was getting so upset that he began violently coughing, and that the man kept grabbing their arms when they would touch boxes or throw things in the trash. Neither of the guys were in the house when me and the other guy heard the coughing from the basement. The guy that went into the basement with me said he had a dream, but all he remembered was waking up sad, like he did something wrong, and had a horrible coughing fit, which might just be a coincidence, but I connected it in my mind as relating to the other dreams. We all talked about it and came to the conclusion that we were all just having a reaction to a situation, and it was nothing more than our brains coping with what we had to do. I'm very into psychology, so I rationalized it the best I could, and we hoped for better assignments the next day. Next few jobs were not so bad. Cleaning up blood at a home invasion, no casualty, but huge mess. Then there was a few other bloody crime scenes with casualties, but nothing notable happened. About 2 weeks into the job, we began to learn the tricks of the trade and were split into 2 different groups that I was responsible to manage as crew leader. So I would have to go to different sites if the other 2 guys had an issue or didn't know what to do. I thought I was getting used to the job as well as the other guys, as we had no other experiences like the first job, but I was wrong. The next job that there was activity was a suicide of a man that was middle-aged. The coroner had already removed the body, but it was a mess. The guy had shot himself with what I think was a large caliber handgun or shotgun, as the spray was everywhere in the basement and a second living room. There were skull fragments lodged in the drywall, brain matter all over, and again, he was not found for a bit, so the smell was horrible. First step in cleaning this was using our backpack vacuum cleaner to suck up all the biomaterial. The coroner told us when we went in that he and his partner were extremely uneasy in the house, and it felt strange, and we immediately started getting a claustrophobic, suffocating feeling when we went into the basement as well. To make matters worse, the family of the man had come over and were crying upstairs, but the vacuum noise helped cancel that out. While I was cleaning, the power to the lights went out and it was completely pitch black. This was strange because my vacuum was still powered. My crewmate started screaming at this point, so I turned off my vacuum and climbed off my ladder. I thought maybe he touched a wire to the lights, but when my vacuum unit was turned off, he was still screaming and I could hear things being knocked over. I started fumbling around for my flashlight on my tool belt and yelled for my friend asking what was going on, but all I got back was a panicked screaming. Then I saw in pitch black something darker that was moving in my direction, and I will admit, I freaked out. I slipped trying to back up, still looking in my belt for the flashlight, and found it when my back hit the basement wall. I turned on the light, aimed at the blackest shape I have ever seen, and when the light turned on, I saw the shape of a man wearing a flannel shirt, beard, and an expression like he was about to attack me. Then it was just gone. My crewmate was behind where the entity was, sitting on the floor, rocking with his hands on his head. When I approached, he picked up the flashlight off the ground and turned it on, then ran up the stairs and outside and threw up. I followed behind him, asking if he was okay and why he was screaming. I thought I just imagined the entity and the man because his screaming scared me, but he told me that he was scrubbing the wall and felt something pulling on something in his tool belt and he thought it was me. But when he turned around, the lights went out and he was engulfed by what he said was like dark smoke and he immediately could not breathe and was struggling to move. He managed to pull his flashlight out, but it was knocked out of his hand like his wrist was grabbed with a force and he managed to scream. When he screamed, trinkets started falling off of an entertainment center that was about 3 feet to his side and the black smoke moved back, but he was close to passing out from exertion. He also said he lost hearing and didn't know that any noise came out when he started screaming and that the stuff falling off the shelf was landing on him and that's why he was covering his head. He said it felt like a weight was lifted off him when the dark smoke backed up, but he felt sick right away and the light from my flashlight made the sick feeling increase. We took an early lunch where he just sat there, pale as ever and didn't say much other than he said he breathed in that smoke and didn't feel right. I got him some Gatorade and his color started coming back. I never told him I saw a man when I turned on my light because we still needed to finish and I didn't want to put that in his head since he never mentioned seeing it. When we went back, the lights in the basement were on again. Half the things that fell from the shelves were back on the entertainment center and the TV was on baseball. There was also a different smell in the room, similar to burnt hair. My workers stayed a half hour, got sick again, and went home for the day, leaving me alone to finish, which I didn't want to do but had to as the other guys had their own job. After cleaning up everything with my vacuum, I began scrubbing the old blood, which is hard after it congeals. Mix in brain matter and it's like glue, even with the cleaner. While I was finishing up, I kept seeing the shape of a person always in the side of my vision. Each time I would smell the strange burnt hair scent, and a few times I also felt like a force was pulling at items on my belt. Not sure which items as there were several things on my belt. When I finished the job, I went to use the bathroom upstairs and in the hallway along the way, I heard like muffled crying or moaning. I froze up and stayed still, thinking maybe a family member had come back, and when I panned around, there was nothing. But I saw a picture on the wall of a man with a beard wearing a flannel. Several other pictures in the hallway of other scenarios of the same man, different flannels with deer or fish or family. I had not seen a picture of that man as I had not been anywhere in the house with a bathroom, nor did I use the bathroom downstairs because pulling off the hazmat stuff is a pain. As I was securing the house, closing all windows, locking all doors, and shutting down every light but the front porch light, I saw the front curtain move and again saw the darker than black form in the front window. The last experience I will share in this thread happened mid-July in a very bad area in Detroit. There had been an incident where a guy supposedly tried to abduct a child, was stopped by people in the neighborhood who beat the man very bad, and he escaped to his house where the neighborhood people quickly called police and civilians surrounded the man's house to prevent escape. The police response time in this area is horrible, and the people were throwing rocks through the man's window and damaged his car. The man was hurt bad by the mob and was hurt by a rock or glass and died in the home. This is the assumption by DPD. From what the police officer told me, it was a misunderstanding, and the man picked up a girl that was injured riding her bike, and some kids that knew her told their parents that the man was kidnapping her, and people overreacted, and the man was brutally beaten. The cleanup was pretty simple to do. We secured windows, cleaned up blood and bodily fluids, but as soon as I entered the house, I just felt wave after wave of fear and sadness. Like I have never felt this before, and it hit in waves that made my legs weak. My working buddy, who was there, showed up late and didn't get the story from the cop like I did, but experienced the same feelings I had. The whole time we were there, we saw a form darting around corners, like it was watching us, then hiding. It was similar to like a small bit of fog or mist. We also heard very slight cries for help coming from several areas in the house, and also what sounded like, "Please stop," and long, "No." A few times the crowd came back and yelled at the house also, and when this was going on, the activity in the house increased and we could hear running footsteps go up the stairs, a door slam, and it sounded like the front door would open and close, but we never saw any of the doors move. The path of the footsteps sounded like from the front door through the living room, to the bathroom, to stairs to the upstairs bungalow room. The part that really got me was I could feel the floor impacts that felt like the vibrations of someone running past me when I was cleaning the areas, and each time I would be hit by one of those waves of fear and sadness. When we left the house, there were few people on porches, hanging out as it was usual during summer, and the people were still hostile and yelling random things, but directed at us as we loaded the van and took off hazmat suits. We ignored this, but before we had loaded all the materials from the house into the van and locked the house, the front door slammed hard enough to sound like a gunshot, which scared me and my crew members, along with the people on the front porch, to the point where they went inside. The front door deadbolt was somehow locked and we could not get it open. I think it was a different key than the knob, so we ended up leaving several boards in that house that were left over from boarding a few of the windows. The feeling of relief when I left the house was like night and day. Inside, I was anxious, scared, paranoid, and just really down, which could be due to knowing the story, but when I got outside, it was like flipping a light switch. I immediately felt better, and me and the other guys in my crew were joking and laughing about dumb stuff and normal 19 and 20-year-old shenanigans.
Jesus. That's fucked.
Yep.
Imagine how many other, like, crime scene cleaners.
Yep.
Oh, man.
Just, like, story after story, like, thing after thing. This guy, like, how could you just keep going into this stuff?
Bro,
oh, my God.
I'm done. I'm out. I quit. I'm not consistently doing that.
No way.
You know why the boss probably didn't tell him what he'd be doing? Because he probably had people quit so much. He's probably like, I'm just throwing this guy in there. We'll see how long he lasts.
Exactly.
No.
Yeah, no.
No, I'm done. I'm out. I'm done.
Yep.
No piotch.
All right.
Okay. This one is this one's coming from the subreddit Ask Reddit again. This one is from 2 years ago. Truckers of Reddit, what spooky things did you witness on the road? And I just have one. I found the best one from it. So here we go. Upper Michigan. I was delivering and installing machines for the company I was working for. I was in a 26-foot box truck with 12 machines in the back. I was having trouble with the truck the day before and had it checked out by the rental company, but they said it was all good. Since I was behind schedule due to the truck and problems with installations, I decided to drive late to my next destination. It was about 11 o'clock at night on the state route through the Upper Peninsula. There were no streetlights and there were no other cars on the road. The headlights from my truck were the only thing illuminating the road. I was already creeped out. At the peak of feeling like I was in the middle of nowhere, because I was in fact in the middle of nowhere, every single light on the dashboard of the truck lit up and then it stalled. Now it's pitch black. I am stopped and the truck isn't restarting. Rather than eat up the battery trying to turn it over, I shut everything down and started making phone calls. As I was calling everyone and anyone that would listen, I sat in the dark night, with the only light being from my hazard lights. I looked up and saw something move in front of the truck, just out of the distance of the flashing lights. At first, I thought it was my imagination. I finally got a hold of someone and they told me it would be 2 to 3 hours before they could get a mechanic to me. So now I'm sitting in silence. The only noise is the clicking the hazard lights are making, and I am staring out the windshield into a void of darkness when I see movement again. Just as I was about to shit my pants, my phone rang, and that nearly secured the pants shitting because it scared the hell out of me. It was the mechanic that wanted me to get out, open the hood, and check some things out. No, I am not getting out of the truck, with an explanation as to why. He was irritated with me, but I didn't care. So finally, after seeing the movement just out of range of the lights one more time, I threw on the headlights with the high beams. The headlights caught 3 wolves snacking on something that looked like roadkill. I honked the horn and they looked at me, but they were irritated more than scared. I was safe. The wolves more than likely weren't going to bother me, but it was spooky just knowing that they were there. So I shut the lights off. I would turn the lights on occasionally to check to see if they were still there. I was basically just sitting there listening to the hazard flashes click while surfing my phone. Each time I turned the lights on, the wolves were still there. Click, click, click. Of the hazard lights. Just to remind you, I'm in the middle of nowhere. No homes, no businesses, nothing but trees, wilderness, and wolves. Click, click, click. I suddenly hear what I can equate to a woman's scream of terror that sounded like it came from right behind the truck. Then, something slammed into the side of the truck, hard enough to rock it. I wasn't afraid of the truck tipping over, but whatever hit it hard enough to rock the suspension enough to move me around inside the cab. And this was a pretty heavy truck. I turned on every light the truck had, slipped it into reverse so the reverse lights came on, and laid on the horn. I was checking both mirrors, and the only thing I saw was a shadow bolt across the road. I couldn't make out what it technically was, but in my head, it was a werewolf / yeti / Bigfoot / lizard monster that was going to end my life, and it was going to be agonizingly painful the entire time. I also noticed the wolves were gone. From every nature documentary I've watched, the only time predators leave food is when there is a bigger / badder predator around. By this time, I was in full Bobby Hill, that's my purse, I don't know you mode. Whatever crossed the road didn't cross very far off the road. I could hear it thrashing around in the bush, breaking sticks and what sounded to be logs. There was no noise pollution. I only had my window cracked a little bit and I could hear pretty well. I basically had the steering wheel gripped, all the lights on, and was feverishly looking out the windows and through the mirrors to make sure nothing was around the immediate area of the truck. I couldn't see off the road, and the flashlights I had were in the back of the truck in my tool bag. I'd have to get out of the truck to get them. That was not happening. Finally, I saw some headlights through one of my mirrors. It seemed like it took hours for them to close the distance to me. The noise stopped as the headlights approached. It was obviously the mechanic because no one else was stupid enough to be out here besides me. The mechanic pulled out in front of me. My headlights were shining on him and his truck. As his doors opened to step out, we both hear the woman screaming in terror yell again, and the bush thrashing intensified. Whatever it was close and pissed. His door immediately closed and my phone rang. He called my phone, asking me what it was. He sounded more panicked than me. I had no clue what it was, and he had no clue what it was. So the mechanic called the police. He wouldn't work on my truck until we could secure the area, which I don't blame him. He didn't like my idea of him getting out of his truck just to check things out. 2 Michigan State police officers eventually showed up. They lit that area up like it was a stadium. I finally stepped out of the truck for the first time since it all started. We heard that scream 3 more times while the mechanic was working on my truck. Thankfully, they were getting farther away. The cops had no clue what it was either, and they were kind of spooked too. The mechanic finally got my truck running, and I made it to my hotel for the night. The next morning, I walked the truck for inspection, and the side that was hit, there was an indentation about the size of a basketball. Whatever hit it didn't hit it hard enough to push it all the way through, but it definitely mushed the fiberglass. The indentation was about 7 feet off the ground. I have no idea what it was. I probably never will. I do confidently know that I will never, ever drive through that area at night again.
No. I'm so glad I have a comfy 9-to-5 corporate job that I don't have to be with ghosts.
Right? I just get this, like, I feel safe inside my cars.
Yeah.
Like, late at night or something, like, inside my little car, whatever my car is at that time, my little 3 Series BMW or my X3, whatever it is, I get inside that car, I feel safe. Mm-hmm. I wouldn't feel safe in this situation. I would be terrified, but, like...
What would you do? Like...
Nothing.
There's nothing you could do.
Hope the glass holds.
That's so terrifying.
Like, glass is cool, but, like, it breaks. Things can get through into your car. You are not completely safe inside the car.
Yeah.
But I don't know. Whenever I get inside my car and it's like a snowy or it's rainy or it's dark out, I get in my car, I start it, I lock the doors, and I feel safe. The heat starts coming on and I feel safe. But man, especially like when I'm at the farm and you're inside the car, you can't see nothing. Yeah. Like, it is scary out there. Terrifying.
That was terrifying.
That was terrifying.
I don't like this.
Oh, man. One time when I lived at the farmhouse, I had some friends over and we were all drinking and we went out drunk driving in the field cars in the fields. Mm-hmm. I will say the only time I've been drunk driving is when I'm, on my own property, not going on the road. So we would be drinking and we would take the cars out and we'd be ripping them through the bushes and stuff, which now in hindsight is still just a dumbass idea. And my friend was driving and he was going through the trees, and guess what? He didn't make the left-hand corner. We went straight into a tree. And the 4 or 5 of us had to walk like 1 to 2 kilometers back to the farmhouse at like 1, 2 in the morning. And you could hear the wolves. You could hear them like howling and stuff like that. And you'd be walking, you'd hear something in the bush, a little scramble. But that was a terrifying walk back. It was like almost 2 kilometers back to the farmhouse, how far we were out in the property. No. We had to walk. We were in the middle of the woods when the car crashed. Pitch black at night. No. Yeah. No. It was bad.
I don't like that.
It was scary. Oh, man. I can't imagine breaking down middle of the night. I don't think I've ever broke down in the middle of the night. But when I used to drive back from the farm, like, I'd be going through the back roads. There's no lights. There's no nothing. It's terrifying. Mm-hmm. Spooky.
All right.
On to you.
On to me. All right. This one comes from r/paranormal, so it is real. Creepy Things My Kid Says, Part 1. My child is a psychic medium and a telepath who can see and mind read the dead and the living. It all started in June of 2020. My daughter, 2, my husband, 36, and I, 35, moved from an apartment in Newark, New Jersey to a house in the middle of the woods in the New Jersey Pine Barrens. Anyone unfamiliar with the Pine Barrens, they are a creepy-looking forest in South Jersey near the shore. The rivers run red as blood. Sandy soils, no brush, just lone, desolate, tiny pine trees. The trees are about 6 feet tall. It's also the supposed home of the Jersey Devil, the namesake of the Jersey Devils hockey team. According to popular folklore, the Jersey Devil originated with a Pine Barrens resident named Jean Leeds, known as Mother Leeds. The legend states that Mother Leeds had 12 children and, after discovering she was pregnant for the 13th time, cursed the child in frustration, declaring that the child would be the devil. In 1735, in a cottage deep in the woods, Mother Leeds was in labor on a stormy night while her friends gathered around her. Unfortunately for her, the 13th child was born normally. However, it transformed into a creature with hooves, a goat's head, bat wings, and a forked tail. Growling and screaming, the child beat everyone with its tail before flying up the chimney and heading into the Pine Barrens. In some version of the tale, Mother Leeds was supposedly a witch, and the child's father was the devil himself. Some versions of the legend also state that local clergymen subsequently attempted to exorcise the creature from the Pine Barrens. Kinda like a chupacabra. There have been mass sightings on record. This will be relevant later. We moved to the countryside to get out of the city, locked down from the pandemic. Newark is only 10 miles from New York City. COVID restrictions were limiting our daily lives. I used to take my daughter to the playground every day, but they closed the playgrounds. The healthcare system there is buckling at the seams on a good day. Curfew on all non-essential traveling. Yeah, I wanted to get away from all of that, and we could move anywhere we wanted because I was online teaching. My husband had a chimney maintenance business, so we made the move. My daughter and I were together all day, which was pretty easy because she had a great disposition. It started with the house. It was a large 2-story with a basement. After we moved in, my husband and I started hearing stomping, doors slamming, doors locking, like an angry couple have been fighting. He and I would text each other, "You mad?" because we thought it was each other at first. When we did fight, doors would lock in between us. I thought he was locking me in/out and vice versa, until it kept happening and we both knew we weren't doing it. It escalated those first couple of arguments though. And don't read into this too much. The reason we were apart with a door between us wasn't because we stormed off or got kicked out. It was just to calm down before we talked it out. There was also the light bulbs. The light bulbs all had a mind of their own. Blinking, strobing, flickering, changing colors. One night I was home alone in bed with my cat and my dog asleep in my lap. All of a sudden they both woke up. They were both staring at something tall next to the bed. Their eyes start tracking it from the bedside to the foot of the bed. At which point my dog lunged towards the entity, jumping off the bed and started barking underneath the bed. I was pretty freaked out. Called my husband, and he's such a skeptic, but he didn't believe it could be anything supernatural. A couple of weeks later, a maintenance guy was sent in by the landlord. We were talking in the living room when he paused and said, "Has anything weird been happening in this house? Have you noticed anything paranormal?" I said, "Yeah, actually," and proceeded to tell him about all this stuff. He said, "Because I see dead people, and I just saw a woman standing in your living room." He gave me a prayer book and told me to put it in the right half of the house where all of the ruckus is. All of the bedrooms, both stories of bedrooms, were on the right. We were nowhere near my daughter for this conversation. She was in her room with the door shut. This is relevant next. At midnight that night, my daughter's 3rd birthday eve, I heard her screaming and crying frantically, trying to open her bedroom, but the door wouldn't open. I thought she locked herself in, but when I went to open it, the handle opened immediately. She leapt into my arms, her face was red, tears streaming down her face, pointed at the bed and said, "It hurt me." "What hurt you?" "That." She points a couple of feet from the bed this time. Her face was shook. She was steady, still pointing and staring at it. I said, "What is that? Is it a person?" "Yes." We both froze in fear. Then my cat came walking down the hall towards us. Big black Bombay with the personality of a reincarnated human. He's the weirdest cat I've ever had. Anybody who knows him knows he's really friendly, like aggressively friendly. And he's so comfortable when we're upset. But instead of stopping at mommy and sister, petrified in fear in the doorway, he pushed past us and was like gravitating towards exactly where my daughter was still pointing. At which point she leapt out of my arms, grabbed her cat, turned to look at the entity, shook her finger and said, "No, ghost, no," and ran out the room. Again, I was home alone. My husband was on a boys' trip to the Poconos. I called him all freaked out, and Mr. Skeptical said, "She's just watching too much Scooby-Doo." I said, if she's being theatrical, we need to get her to Hollywood because she's a hell of a good actress. Also, how do you explain my cat in some sort of ghost trance? The funny thing is, she's not an actress at all. Very what you see is what you get. Doesn't ever lie. Is bad at it when she even tries. I love her. She's so gifted. But bless her heart, she's not the most imaginative or creative kid. Ask her to name a new Barbie, and it's Barbie. New teddy bear? Teddy. She's on the spectrum, and at the time, was still largely nonverbal. After this point, thankfully, the noises and occurrences in the house died down. For the next 2 years, things were relatively uneventful. The light bulb still did weird stuff, but no other signs. I never turned the basement light off. It just gave me the creeps. I might have been right too, but we'll get there. We thought we were in the clear, but then there's this weird shit in the woods behind our house. At 10 p.m. every night, my dog would be gunning to go outside. When I let him out, he would run up to the tree line and just lose his mind, barking his head off. I wasn't sure if it was a peeping Tom. In my lifetime, I have had 3. My Ukrainian mom said maybe it was some kind of Ukrainian house spirit I successfully cast out of the house, but now it's still stalking us. They like to hang out around your perimeter. Jersey Devil? Really? Who knows? Maybe just some deer? That's what I wanted to believe. Then my husband was outside burning boxes in the fire pit when he saw a dark figure about 5 or 6 feet tall with 2 red glowing eyes staring at him from 3 meters away. Even he couldn't deny that was weird. We got an expensive taser after that. He had me tested on him in the snow. It works. We might have accidentally traumatized the neighbor's kids. Okay, so there is way more. This is really only setting the stage for the bulk of what's to come. After this, we get entirely into everything she says. I'm going to stop here for discussion because of how much has already been covered. I know it's lengthy. Let me know if I'm rambling or if I should be more concise. My mind goes a million directions at once.
Holy fuck. Oh my god.
So we have a part 2, but...
It's crazy. Before we get into part 2.
Yeah.
This is our merch pillow. If you're on YouTube, this is our merch pillow. It's a little bit upgraded from the last pillowcase. I got the colors lined up nicely here, but our merch website is finally live.
Yay!
Woo!
Woo!
You guys have been asking for merch, so we now have it. We got pillowcases, got hoodies, we got t-shirts, we got lots of stuff.
We got lots of stuff. We got pretty much anything you guys want. If you want something else, if you've been... you want, I don't know, socks or something. We actually have socks.
We do.
But if you think of anything else that you guys want, let us know.
Yeah, we'll talk about this a bit more at the end of the episode, but I just wanted to throw that in there right now.
All right, part 2.
Part 2.
Picking up right where I left off. If you haven't seen part 1, I'll link it in the comments. I'm aware this suspends belief. Friends and family have mixed reactions for years. They either think that she and I are mental, or they think she's gifted. You can make of this what you will. I'm just relaying the events as they happened. If I sound like I'm leaning towards it being real, it's hard to experience this stuff and not wonder. I do want to get into her seeing and talking to ghosts and angels, but for both chronological order and for context in what's to come, I'm going to get into the mind-reading stuff first. Okay, so when she was 3 years old, my daughter started responding to things I was thinking in my head out loud. The first time it happened, we were on a flight from New Orleans to Newark, returning from visiting during spring break. I was thinking to myself, I want to move down south again, but I don't want to disrupt her stability. I was thinking maybe she'd be happier if we just stayed put. Out loud she said, I don't want to stay there. I want to move down here. Now, this is one of the more plausible things a child would randomly say, so I didn't assume she was reading my mind, per se, but it definitely made me raise an eyebrow. The next time it happened, I was driving home late at night, and I always had to drive extra slow through the woods after dark. There were so many deer out there. I used to count them each time, and we're talking like a good dozen each time. I used to call it deer safari, lol. You drive slow while appreciating the wildlife, while hoping it doesn't come towards you and kill you. By car crash, obviously deer are pretty docile. My daughter was in the back seat. I was thinking to myself, I wish more people in New Jersey would go hunting so there were less of them all over the road. Ha! I'm a vegetarian and praying for people to kill deer? How ironic. When my daughter in the backseat busted out with, Mommy, I want to kill a deer. Okay, now that's a weird thing for her to say. My husband and I never talked about deer hunting, and she's had very little outside influence, never mind being a strange desire for a toddler, even if they were familiar with the concept. She starts translating for the pets. She tells me she knows what they're saying when they meow/bark, signal, whatever, and it's cute. Like, okay, sure. She always gets it right, though. It cuts down on me playing the guessing game. Obviously, this isn't concrete or anything. I'm just including everything that's happened. One day, she's staring out the front door with my dog staring at a squirrel, and she starts talking really fast. I gotta get that squirrel. I need to get that squirrel. I gotta get that squirrel. As if she was channeling his thoughts. She has never spoken like that before or since. Then, speaking of my dog getting squirrels, His dream came true. He dragged a baby squirrel into the house. I rescued it from his mouth like, OMG. I couldn't get the baby to the nature rescue folks until the morning, so I went to the supermarket and got some kitten milk, but I couldn't find a bottle for it. I fed the baby squirrel using a straw and then the corner of a Ziploc bag. I literally got this poor thing to latch onto a plastic bag. I fostered kittens before, so I knew he couldn't retain his own body heat. I had him on my chest for as long as possible, trying to keep him warm. I fell asleep. When I woke up, he was dead underneath me. Rest in peace, little buddy. I was scared of how my daughter would take it, so I wanted to bury him before she woke up. I went into the woods behind my house and returned his body to nature. When she woke up, I told her he went to go live with his mommy, but she didn't believe me, and nothing I said was making it better. She was standing at the back door with tears rolling down her face. I was like, okay, avoiding upsetting her isn't working. Let me just tell her the truth. I told her he died. I asked her if she wanted to go see his grave, and she said yes. We went into the woods, uncovered his body. She said, yep, he's dead, and she covered his grave back up, and seemed to have gotten some peace and closure. We were walking back to the house, her in front and me behind her, and I was feeling so guilty about how he died. I started picturing it. When she gasped, she turned around to look at me and said, "You killed him in your sleep?" Like she was legit surprised and appalled out of nowhere. That's one of the incidents that really sticks with me. Another really curious incident. We are Jewish. It was Yom Kippur, New Year's. It's a time of atonement and doing like a review of oneself over the past years, reflecting on how we can be a better person. I was driving with my daughter in the backseat, meditating on my moral inventory, and I was being really, really tough on myself. People are always telling myself I'm too hard on myself, so I was like, okay, God, how much should I take into account and how much should I give myself a break? When my daughter says, God wants you to listen to the universe, from the backseat. Okay, God, creepy, but noted. After these incidents, I started talking to my family and friends about it. My daughter is 4 by this point. One of my sisters asked my daughter to do it on command. My daughter said, "You're thinking of nothing." My sister laughed. She had blanked her mind on purpose to try to trick her. My daughter's best friend asked her to do it too, and again she got it. Her friend was like, OMG, how did you do that? My daughter said, because I'm a brain thinker. We asked her, do you know what cats are thinking? Yes. Dogs? Yes. People? Yes, except Auntie Jenny. I don't ever know what Auntie Jenny is thinking. I thought it was really cute she came up with her own word for it because she didn't know the word telepathic. Now I'm hyper aware in what I think about when I'm around her. I'm a little unnerved by the possibility I don't have private thoughts around her. I catch her staring at me and I try to scramble my brain. I know it sounds crazy, truly, but I challenge anyone to have it happen to them and not be a little creeped out. However, if she's telling the truth, the minds of the living aren't the only minds she can read.
Fucking crazy. This is wildness.
And I don't think there's any other part 3s. That's all they've posted, unfortunately. But
maybe they'll come out with a part 3.
Maybe I'll read it for the Halloween episode, if they do.
Maybe. Oh, man.
I couldn't imagine having a psychic daughter that can see ghosts. No thanks.
Okay, we talk about, like, you know, pros and cons of having kids, and, like, one of the cons would be, like, they turn out to be, like, a terrible child, and they're always screaming in the grocery store and stuff like that. Oh, imagine they're, like, seeing ghosts and talking. No. That's way worse.
That's the worst case scenario.
You can't, oh, my God, you can't fix that. That'd be fucked. Oh, my.
Yep.
Okay.
All right.
Okay. I have another Am I the Asshole one.
Okay.
Am I the asshole for being mad that my husband let us buy a possibly haunted house? We're in our early 30s with kids. We decided to sell our home and upgrade to a bigger one. We were looking for houses for a couple of months and finding it frustrating. Got outbid on one that we really liked. Then my husband told me his coworker was selling his house and thought we might be interested. Me and my husband went over for dinner, had a good time, and took a good look at the house. It met everything we were looking for. We decided to go forward and enter negotiations about buying the house, and we moved in July. Living in the house has been nice so far. However, I recently ran into the coworker's wife at the supermarket and we were chatting about the house. I mentioned how I'm starting to decorate it for the fall, and she said the spooky decorations will make the ghosts feel at home, and laughed. I was really confused and asked her what she meant. and she seemed equally confused. She said she and the kids have had weird experiences, bad nightmares, doors slamming, and other weird noises, creepy auras in the house, and that they thought it was haunted. She assumed my husband had mentioned it to me, and we were on the same page that we didn't care. Well, we were not on the same page. My husband never told me. For background, my husband is very skeptical and a rational man. I confronted him, and he said he didn't tell me because, one, his coworker said he'd never experienced anything, so it was just his wife and kids, and two, he knew I would get irrational and be scared even though the house is perfect for us, and three, ghosts are not real anyways. He insisted that he did not withhold information about the house itself. It was just irrelevant information about the coworker's family and their beliefs. I am infuriated that he let us buy this house without telling me. I now feel scared in my own home. I don't feel safe here at night anymore, and every noise puts me on edge. I've been looking for a sale on cameras so that we can record inside the house and see if we can identify if any spirits are visiting. I also told our children about it so they can be safe and aware, but my husband is mad at me because they're scared now too. I'm hoping that the previous family was either hallucinating, but both the wife and kids, or that the spirits traveled with them to their new home. I'm not sure what I will do if they're actually here. My husband is not being very considerate of my fears and just keeps insisting ghosts are not real. He says I have no right to be mad or throw our family into turmoil over this. I know what he believes, but that's not what I believe, and he put us in this situation. Am I the asshole?
No, I would never move into a knowingly haunted house. Absolutely not. Your husband is a fucking asshole. Bro, I would divorce over this.
What? What?
Maybe not. I'm just joking. But come on. If you kept that from me, no, it's over.
What if it wasn't known to be haunted, but somebody died in it?
Still. I don't know, actually. It depends. Were they the last ones?
What if it was $1 million house that you scooped up for $200,000?
Well, there's a reason. No.
I'll take the ghosts.
No,
Give me that mansion.
No way.
Why not?
I would not. No amount of money. No way. No way. What are you going to do when you're possessed? What are you going to do with the money when you're possessed? A demon takes over your body? No, thank you.
I won't even know I'm possessed.
No. No.
Top comment. You're the asshole. You told your children? Why? So that they can be scared and paranoid as well? You haven't experienced anything and wouldn't have known the difference had the former owner not said anything. Your husband did nothing wrong, but needlessly traumatizing children is very wrong.
That person's wrong. Sorry. No. Like, okay, maybe you shouldn't have told the kids, but them saying that the husband did nothing wrong, you're wrong. You're fucking wrong. The husband lied or withheld information.
Is that terrible, though?
Yes.
For something that he doesn't believe in?
Oh, my God. No.
It was a good deal. It was a good house. He made the executive decision so that they could live in a bigger house and could afford to do it. And if you just didn't tell her and she never experienced anything, could be like a friggin' steal. Worst case, if she's like gets spooked out and stuff, okay, we sell the house and we move back into a smaller house. I don't know. It could have been for
if that demon latches onto you?
Could have been for the greater good.
No.
If it was going to latch onto them, it would have latched onto the people before her.
That's not true.
When does the demon decide to stay in the house or move on with them?
I don't know. I'm scared.
What if there's demons in this
Stop! Don't say that.
Wait, what if there's ghosts in our condo building?
Stop.
Which apartment do they decide that they're going to bug?
I don't know.
Or are they going to bug all of us? They just roam up and down the floors.
It's not old enough.
What if people have died I'm sure some old people have died in here, maybe.
I don't know. Don't make me scared.
Overall vote was asshole.
That's crazy.
I think they voted her the asshole because, like, why would you tell your kids? Don't tell your kids. You are creating fear in your kids for no freaking reason.
That wasn't the question, though. The question wasn't about the kids.
Yeah, she said, am I the asshole for being mad at my husband?
Yeah, it has nothing to do with the kids. So they're voting her the asshole for the kids part. That's not what she's asking.
Well, she shouldn't have told her kids. Yeah.
I would be so mad at you. All right. I think this is going to be my last one.
Okay, I have one more.
Okay.
After two.
This one comes from r/scary stories. I'm a police officer that quit his job after a paranormal experience. I'm not a superstitious person. I didn't believe in ghosts or demons until now. Yeah, stuff happens that can't be explained, but I just want you all to know that it took more than a couple of flying spoons or a door opening on its own to scare me out of my job. Since the department didn't find any reason to keep this police report confidential, I will now detail you everything I can on what happened on the scariest night of my life. We had just received word from dispatch to check out a noise complaint in a small neighborhood whose name I will not disclose for their privacy. It was me and my partner. Let's call him Paul, and I'll go by Mike. We arrived sometime after midnight. The street is dead. Everyone is sound asleep at this point. We park a patrol car in front of the aforementioned house and exit the vehicle. We knock on the door and let our presence known. Police, is anyone home? A little girl, 8 to 10 in appearance, opens the door and peeks through the gap. Hey, I crouch to make myself less intimidating. Are your parents or guardians home? She shakes her head. My first thought was that she probably had the TV on a little too high and woke up the neighbors. But before I could tell her to stay inside and lock the doors, then part, I heard the sound of crashing silverware coming from what I presumed would be the kitchen. The entire house was nearly pitch black. The girl answering the door and shaking her head let me know she was alone, which makes whoever made that noise an intruder as far as it concerns me. I asked the girl to step outside and turn to Paul. Paul, why don't you give her one of those lollipops you like to suck on when you're nervous? Paul gave me a cold stare as the girl giggled. They went to go wait by the car as I slowly pushed the door all the way open. Police, if there is anyone in this house, please let yourself be known. Without a warrant, I had no right to enter the building. I tried my best to spot whoever made the noise, but it is too dark to see. Just any sign of a threat and I would be justified to search the house. But nothing. I left the door open and headed back towards Paul and the girl. Hey again, I don't think we introduced ourselves. I'm Officer Mike. This is my partner Paul. If I may ask, what is your name? Maribel. That's a pretty name. So, Maribel, again, if I may ask, where is your family? As soon as I had finished my sentence, the television in the living room turned on, volume fully up. Me and Paul quickly turned in surprise and could see the television playing static from outside. We put Maribel in the backseat of the patrol car for her safety as no civilians were allowed in the front seats. We then, against her better judgment, entered the house. We tried every switch in the house, but no lights came on. While wandering the house cautiously, I would catch a person standing in the mirrors. I thought it was Paul, but every time I looked behind me, Paul was nowhere to be found. As I returned to the front door along with Paul, we both jumped as running footsteps echoed down the hall. We detached our firearms and aimed it at the source. The footsteps got louder and got closer, but no one ever appeared physically. Lamps, chairs, and other stuff started getting thrown around by an invisible force as the footsteps reached us. We sprinted out of the house and waited by the front door. The footsteps seemed to stop, followed by the police siren that went off. I ran to the car and silenced the siren. I looked back at Paul, who seemed shook. You alright, Paul? He takes a lollipop out of its package and puts it in his mouth. Yep. I opened the rear door and checked on Maribel. You okay? She nodded her head, so I walked back to Paul. I don't know what to make of this, he said. Yeah, me either. No, seriously. Ignore the running invisible man that knocked everything down for a second. All the family photos, pictures on the wall. He points to Maribel. She's not in any of them. So, what are you thinking? The footsteps led outside. Then the siren goes off. There's a million buttons in that car. But what are the chances? Paul, are you trying to tell me Maribel is haunted? How do you explain what we just saw? I'm sure there's an explanation. The TV turns on when we take Maribel outside, prompting us to check it out. Someone or something shows up in the mirrors but ducks away. I remember wanting to shut him up. Not because he wasn't making any sense, but because he was. I know you've seen it. It was prowling around. Then it runs outside and gets in the car, tries all the buttons. I think a ghost is trying to get to the girl. I just stood there, not sure what to say, until Paul decided to start walking back towards the house. Paul, what are you doing? It only shows up in mirrors. That's how we find it. I followed him inside and watched as he took a book from the counter and breaks the nearest mirror. What's the matter with you? That's someone's property. He takes a shard and hands another to me. It's not every day you get to arrest a ghost. We aimed our flashlights all over the house, waiting for something to appear in the broken glass. I recall praying to God Almighty to not let anything show up, but it did. I panicked as it swung its red, bony arm at my back. It ripped through my uniform, causing me to fall forward. I dropped the glass, which broke into smaller chunks. It continued clawing at my shirt and flesh, but stopped when Paul opened fire. I heard its screech fading as Paul helped me up. We both then hurried back outside to find Maribel missing from the back seat. It was difficult explaining what happened to the department without sounding like nutjobs. The police cameras, who we were betting on to prove our stories, had shut off the moment we entered the house. The thing, whatever it was, must have turned them off while we were unaware. Only part of our story that our police captain took seriously was the girl, Maribel. The captain brought up a missing person report and asked us if this was the girl we saw. It was. It's been just a few days since I gave up the badge to save whatever little pride I could spare. I just asked to whoever reads this and to whomever it may reach. The next time a door opens on its own or things move by themselves in your home, check the mirrors.
Creepy.
Yeah. Do you think this one was fact or fiction?
Well, this definitely reads like fiction.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was.
Good
Oh, yes. Sorry, I didn't read the username. The username is the Bat Belfry.
And we'll also have it linked down below.
Yes. That's it for me.
Okay.
Let's hear your last one.
All right. This one was posted 4 years ago. It's coming from r/ghost stories. Username is wolf_dream. Okay, I think this is going to be the scariest one. I have saved my scariest one for last.
Great. Fuck.
Title is My Trip to the Slaughter Yard. A story my mom wouldn't tell me until I was 30. Let me start out by saying I enjoy writing this, so it can be a bit long. It is non-fiction though, but will hopefully be an interesting read. I also admit that I have absolutely no memory of this experience. I was a little over 2 years old and just starting to walk on my own when this event took place. My mom only told me this story about 3 years ago when I was 32 and about to get married. My mother was raised in a very tiny fundamentalist Christian community and had no belief in the paranormal. She believed that our souls sleep until Judgment Day or something like this. Ergo, there are no ghosts or spirits to haunt houses. Even over 30 years later, she still sounded terrified as she told me this. This woman, who always talks way too loud, was literally whispering by the end of it, and she was white as a sheet. I believe her completely and still do. My mom never talks about stuff like this, and I'm just glad I can't remember it too. In 1988, my parents had their second child. This was my brother Victor. We were very crowded in our rented flat with 2 babies. My parents decided to move to a rambling old 2-story farmhouse on a 7-acre plot in southern Ohio for more room for the family. It was way out in the sticks and took almost an hour to get to town from there. My mom said the first time I saw the house, I freaked out. I was crying and saying things like, "Don't like mean house, ugly house, don't like, scary house, mama, don't like." My mom says this behavior was very out of character for me, but I stopped complaining about the house after a few weeks, so she chalked it up to the stress of the move. Now, this house was ramshackle AF and in the middle of nowhere. The kitchen was to the far rear of the house, and until recently before we moved in, still had a working ancient wood-burning cooking stove against the back wall. This had caught the back of the wall on fire a couple of months before we moved in and caused a lot of damage. A lot of this damage wasn't fixed, so my young, broke parents got a very cheap rent agreement. Gotta love the 80s. On the second floor, directly above the kitchen, was a locked room. The landlord claimed it had heavy fire damage, but her son, who had done the repairs, claimed the only fire damage left was in the kitchen since it had been the worst and was beyond his skill level to fix. Either way, the landlord was adamant that the room was off limits, and my parents always respected that. If it was me, I would have looked, 100%, lol. I know all this because I heard about the crappy farmhouse with the creepy door my whole life, and there were pictures of us in and around the farmhouse. The locked door was right next to the upstairs landing, so there was no avoiding it, and both my parents have told me it gave them the creeps. A few months after we moved in, my mother and I were in the yard with our pit/Doberman mix, Boss. She was hanging the laundry and I was rolling around with the dog. She said that just as she noticed that everything was way too silent, Boss started going apeshit from surprisingly far away. Around 500 yards from that house on the left, there was a small duck pond. Boss was in between the two, running towards my mom, then turning and running back towards the pond, barking frantically the whole time. My mom saw something thrashing around in the middle of the pond. She took off towards the water full speed. Boss beat her there and dragged me out of the water himself. Although my mom was confused how I got so far so fast and how I got into the center of the pond, since it was over my head and I couldn't swim, she figured she underestimated me and brought in the baby gates and playpens. I was to be contained from now on. A few weeks later, she was cooking downstairs. Boss was outside, Victor asleep in his crib, and I was in my playpen in my room upstairs. I also had a gate on my door and one at the top of the stairs. The stairs ran up from the side of the kitchen, so my mom said she could listen for us crying or fussing while she was cooking. My mom said no longer than 15 minutes after the last time she looked in on us kids, Boss started going crazy again in the yard. She runs up to check on us. Victor's still sleeping. Every baby gate is still shut and locked, but I am not in my room. A frenzied search reveals that I'm not in the house at all. A sudden image of Boss saving me from drowning causes my mom to rush outside to see what he's trying to tell her this time. She said he was running circles in the yard, barking uncontrollably. When she got outside, he took off towards the right, away from the pond. He would run ahead, turn around and bark at my mother, wait for her to catch up a little bit before racing off again. He ended up leading her almost 1.5 miles out onto the dirt road that separates our property from our neighbors. He led her to a thick stand of trees on our neighbor's side of the rocky drive. She said what hit her first was the foul stench of advanced decay. She plowed into the trees with her heart in her throat and her stomach full of ice. She said she noticed many piles of corrugated tin, tarps, tires, and other debris. The miasma was emanating most strongly from these junkyard cairns. Peeking under a sheet of tin, she discovered the extremely decomposed corpse of a butchered cow. As she headed deeper into the thicket, where the tree cover was denser, she said less care was taken to cover the remains. Grisly pieces of bones and rotted chunks of bovine littered the area. Apparently, our neighbor, in an effort to cheat us taxes, had been illegally slaughtering cattle and hiding the remains in at least one of the few thick stands of trees around. She found me in the dead center of this thicket, just standing there, looking around like I was confused, surrounded by carnage. She said I didn't seem scared or anything. I was just standing there. She rushed over to me, after ascertaining that I was not injured, began questioning me on why I was there, how I got there, etc. Keep in mind that although my mother said I started speaking very young, I still didn't have very much vocabulary. She said I told her, with that serious look only small children can give, that the children brought me here.
What the fuck?
Shitting her pants at the thought that anyone, even children, could walk straight past her through the kitchen, get me from upstairs, and walk right back past her on the way down and out with me, she demanded to know what children and where the hell they are now. I looked at her dead serious and told her the ones that live with us in the room at the top of the stairs, and that I didn't see them anymore. After a moment of stunned silence, she started asking all kinds of questions about these children. However, she told me that I refused to say anything else. She said as long as she questioned about what happened, I would just stand there staring at her with a serious expression and my mouth closed. She said this same pattern held true every other time she brought it up to me, so she was always left wondering and immediately began hounding my dad about moving closer to town. While the incident with me getting into the pond was highly unlikely, it was at least remotely possible. My mother is adamant that me being in the hidden slaughter yard that day was flat impossible. She says there's no way I could have known it was out there, much less have the ability to open and relock the baby gates, get downstairs, past her, and end up almost 2 miles down the road in this place in under 15 minutes. I was only 2 and as slow and clumsy as most toddlers. As I said, she is still shaken by it 30 years later. Personally, I have no idea what happened that day. I've thought about hypnosis, but haven't yet decided I really want to remember. Maybe it's better to let it be a mystery, because whatever the fuck those things were, I really don't think they were children.
Oh my god. What would you do if your parents just told you this? Now. Like, this is what happened to you. I would hate myself. No, I would be so afraid of myself. I would literally be so fearful of myself.
Imagine your mom has a hidden horror story about this.
No.
Like
oh my
this about you.
god. I cannot imagine.
Imagine the trauma the mom's going through.
Literally. That's... How do you explain that? Everyone's gonna think you're a fucking psychopath.
Or a bad mom.
No. I don't think so. If it happened in 15 minutes, it, like she said, it's literally impossible.
But it's her story.
How would... no one would believe you.
Exactly. They would think you're a bad mom.
Oh my god. That was terrifying.
That was, right? Holy, had me going. That one was real.
I'm really spooked.
Scary movie time?
No, I want to watch Halloween Town.
Okay. I hope you guys have enjoyed this episode. I actually still have like 3 more stories.
I have 4.
But we're going to push that on to our Patreon episode.
Yes.
That will be Patreon number 21, I think. 21 episodes on Patreon. That is crazy.
Yep. So if you've caught up to all of our stories or all of our episodes here on Spotify, we have extras, 21 to be exact, that you can binge watch or listen on our Patreon.
And they come out every Friday, so weekly bonus episodes. Appreciate you guys heading over to Patreon and supporting us there. I've had so many of you guys come on board, so we appreciate all the support, and we're happy to bring you those bonus episodes.
Thank you so much. And if you've enjoyed this episode, if you enjoyed this podcast, please give us a rating and review on Spotify or Apple Podcast or whatever platform you're listening on.
Yeah, drop the comment below, smash the like button, subscribe to our YouTube channel.
We appreciate you guys so much. And next week is Halloween.
Halloween theme
stories.
Next week. We're going to keep the spooky decorations up, but it's going to be more Halloween themed stories.
Yes. A couple minor spooky, but not like some are just like
they
Halloween
might be spooky,
theme.
but they're going to be spooky on Halloween.
Yeah.
Yeah, Halloween spookiness.
I mean, not all of them are spooky.
No,
most of mine aren't spooky.
Halloween theme, not a spooky theme. Could be spooky.
Yes.
Most likely not spooky.
Yes,
Halloween
exactly.
theme. Slightly different.
Yep.
And then after that, survival stories for the last October episode.
Yes.
So we got a lot coming up on future episodes. So make sure you guys hit that follow button and subscribe button, and make sure you guys stay up to date with the future episodes.
Yes. And next week we're wearing our costumes.
Costume time. I'm pumped.
Yeah, me too. Any life updates or anything?
Yeah, we got a life update.
Do we?
Yeah.
What?
Merch
has arrived.
We got sweaters that have come in. So I've been working on our website for about a month now, and we got the pillowcases coming in. So if you guys want, I upgraded these ones. Like I said before, the colors now match. The other one was kind of like not the correct way. So the coloring matches our theme. We got hoodies, we got t-shirts, we got coffee mugs, we got hats, socks. We just need to get the underwear set up.
Imagine.
But yeah, so a lot of you guys have been asking us for merch, and we've done it. So links down below, threadtalkpodcast.com. We appreciate all of you guys supporting us. So if you guys just need a new hoodie or a t-shirt and you want to get some Thread Talk merch.
And we should mention, everything on the website is in Canadian dollars.
Yes. So if you're American, the bill will be cheaper than you think it is.
We have sometimes it's okay to be the assholes, hoodies, t-shirts, stuff. And we got some just ThreadTalk stuff as well.
Some of them are embroidered, some of them are not. So whatever your preference is, you can find everything. If you guys have any other ideas for merch, because it's, it's blind demand, it's what you guys have been asking us for, just drop a comment down below and we'll make some adjustments for you.
Yes. And thank you so, so much for supporting us. We truly appreciate you guys so, so much.
Yeah, it's incredible. Any other life updates?
I don't think so.
We finished season 6 of Gilmore Girls.
Yeah, we're on the final season, guys.
They broke up. Lorelai broke up with Luke. Better get back together.
They're going to get back together.
I didn't like how they made her sleep with Christopher.
I didn't like that either.
Didn't like that. It was no piach on that. It was no good.
People don't understand what you're saying, by the way.
No piach.
No piach.
No piach is Italian for I don't like. Okay, if you're not Italian and you keep hearing me say it, from what I've been told, it means I don't like in Italian. Teresa's family says it all the time.
Yeah. No mi piace.
I watched some movies. I watched Finch. I watched movies without Teresa. I watched Finch.
When?
I started Finch at 11, from 11 to 12. When you started sleeping, I stayed up till 12 the first night, watched an hour of Finch.
Oh.
And then I finished it the next day. Last night, when you left me. You left me alone last night.
Yep.
So I finished it then. And then I watched Civil War. That was actually pretty good. Surprising.
Looked not good, but
it was a movie that I enjoyed. Yeah.
I finally got my Eras Tour outfit for Toronto.
Oh, you
November.
know what you're doing. Yeah, Reputation.
Yes, I'm going as Reputation era. I'm not going to show you guys what I have yet, just because I don't know. But I'm excited. I haven't received it yet. I've ordered all my stuff, and I'm very, very excited.
That's good.
Yeah, I wonder what my sister and my mom are going to wear, because they're not like huge
probably normal
Swifties,
clothes.
but they have to I'm going to make them dress up as something.
Okay. You will.
Mom, be ready.
Get ready.
Get ready.
All right, I think this was
It was a really long episode.
This is our longest episode to date.
I was really excited for this episode.
We took a break to get a
Yeah.
little snack in there.
Yeah.
Have you seen how long it's been recording for?
No?
We're coming up on 4 hours.
What?
This is going to be for them, this was probably 3 to 3.5 hours.
No way.
That was a lot of spooky stories.
Wait, that's a lot.
That's going to be a lot of editing for me.
Holy, all right.
I hope you guys enjoyed it.
Jeez, that's a lot longer than I thought.
Yeah.
All right.
Been here all afternoon.
Yeah.
Okay. Thanks, guys.
We'll see you guys next time.
Bye.
Bye.